All right, guys. We have a few things scheduled today, but Trump is live right now with a press conference. So let's check that out.
And
how's everybody doing?
The former NATO General Secretary today has told you that he does not agree, and he believes in territorial integrity of the Ukraine. How will you deal with that with your allies? And do you stand by that Ukraine have to give?
Former Secretary General happens to be right here, so they can't put words in his mouth. He's been a great general, frankly. It was because that's what you are. Really, you're a general. But he's been a great Secretary General. We had a tremendous relationship, very successful, and I think he could speak for himself. He's right here.
But do you still agree that Ukraine have to give some territory away to win peace?
Well, it depends what territory. They've been fighting. They've lost a lot of territory. And we'll do the best we can. Working with Ukraine, we'll do the best we can. But they lost a lot of territory. When you say Crimea, that was handed over during a president named Barack Hussein Obama. That had nothing to do with me, Crimea. That was 11 years ago with Obama. And they made a decision. There wasn't a bullet fired. There was no fighting. There was no anything. They just handed it over. Now they say, well, can you get it back? I think that's going to be a very difficult thing to do. That was given by Barack Obama when he was president, not by Donald Trump.
Thank you, Mr. President. You had a long meeting, Mr. President. That you put on the table. It's a 30-day ceasefire proposal. Your national security team presented it to both Ukraine and Russia. 2 months ago, Ukraine agreed to that ceasefire proposal immediately. Russia has not. And my question is Russia the obstacle to peace based upon that, just getting to that 30-day ceasefire?
I don't think so. I think that they both want peace right now. They're ready to do something. We'll see.
Look at this, guys.
Complicated, very complicated.
Ukraine has lost.
I think they are both very much
19% almost.
To make a deal. Marco, what would you say?
19% of their territory because of this ongoing war.
Well,
That's
first of all,
tough.
We've shown them a pathway forward. We've discussed those ideas. It was a good meeting yesterday. There'll be good meetings over the weekend. We've shown them the finish line. We need both of them to say yes. But what happened last night with those missile strikes should remind everybody of why this war needs to end. It's horrible those missiles landed. What's even worse is there are today people that were alive yesterday that are not alive today because this war continues. And the president wants to stop it. And everyone should be thanking the president for being a peacemaker and trying to save lives. That's what we're trying to do here. It's not our war. We didn't start it, as you know. But we're trying to end the dying. We're trying to end the destruction. And we've shown the path forward. We can see the finish line, but both of them have to get there. We're going to do everything we can to help them get there, but they have to ultimately say yes.
And we are using a lot of pressure on both. If you think we're just in there because we're nice people, and we are nice people, but we're using a lot of pressure on both.
What concessions, Mr. President, and to your national security team, what concessions has Russia offered up thus far to get to the point where you're closer to peace?
Stopping the war. Stopping taking the whole country. Pretty big concession.
Mr. President, if you are going to take down the tariffs, what do you want Norway to buy more of from the US?
To buy more? Well, you don't need snow. You don't need skis. You don't need ski champions either, right? You have a lot of them. We just want to keep the relationship the way it is. We've had a great relationship. I think now maybe closer than ever, but we've had a great relationship with Norway. I think just keep it the way it is. You can't do better.
Really? Not even by, say, 5
Well, if they want to give us some additional concessions, that's okay. You can't do much better. Yes, yes.
Mr. President, you had a long meeting with Norway today. You said that Norway is doing a lot of things right, but on the Ukraine, if I can ask both you and the Prime Minister, did you find common ground today on Ukraine and the peace plan?
Totally. It's totally common ground. The Prime Minister can speak about it, but I can just say he wants to see people stop dying more than anything else, and he'd like to see it end. He's going to help us end it.
Can I say that to move towards an end of this war, U.S. engagement is critical, and President Trump made that possible. That is clear, that is obvious, it's really happening. Now the important thing is that both parties have to know that they have to deliver, and they have to feel the pressure to deliver. Ukraine is under attack. They are defending themselves. Lives are being lost. And we believe very firmly that there needs to be a ceasefire, the initiative taken by the US some time ago. It needs to be respected. And then to move on to something which both parties can own. That is the complicated part in such a dramatic war. And here I believe Europeans and Americans working together, as we do much closer now. And I salute the team of President Trump of being, open in that process. We had a good discussion on this today. And then we have to move on, and we cannot lose time because this is too much drama happening. One thing is people losing their lives, but it is a bad thing for Europe, and it's a bad thing for the world to having such a broad conflict going on. It can have ramifications far beyond Ukraine.
Mr. President, follow-up question on China.
Mr. President, if I forgot my question. I wanted to ask about sorry.
That happens.
It happens sometimes. Yeah. No, Mr. President, I wanted to ask about the. Well, actually, Zelensky has said that he wants more Patriot missiles. So far, there has been no response from the United States. If the United States decides to pull out of negotiating for peace, trying to broker peace, does that also mean a no on Patriot missiles, a no on sharing intelligence with Ukraine?
Let's see what happens. I think we're going to make a deal. And if we make a deal, that'll be wonderful. We won't have to worry about your question.
Trump's being smart.
Ask that question in 2 weeks, and we'll see. But I think we're getting very close. The Prime Minister feels the same way, and
he's not giving them anything that'll mess up any of the progress and negotiations they already have made, like Zelensky has done in the past. You don't want to talk shit about Putin or Zelensky and mess up negotiations, right?
Because I like them. And I like your Prime Minister, and I like the way your government runs. And
Is he talking about
I respect
Norway?
the king. He's highly respected in Norway. It's a great thing, not an easy thing to do. He's done a great job. Yeah.
Would you like an invitation to visit the king?
Absolutely. You get me that invitation.
I just told the president he's welcome to visit Norway.
Let's go.
Yeah, please.
Now I want to see what makes Norway great.
You like the Norwegian Petroleum Fund, and I'm wondering if that has been up for discussion today, the way that we have structured our money and whether.
Well, this fund was created in the late 1990s to save for future generations the income from our oil and gas. Norwegians should continue to work as hard, dedicated, innovate, and move forward, despite having these incomes, which we happen to be in the period of our history where we can harvest, and we have transferred that into investments, half of them, by the way, here in the United States. So I think this is a model which we have been able to explore. If we can share experiences, and we do with our colleagues in the US, you never copy this one-to-one, but there can be techniques and way of working that we have used in organizing our fund. Jens Stoltenberg was the finance minister when the first dollar entered that fund. So he is a safe hand to have as a finance minister today. What do you say?
All right, so there's not much going on in this interview, I don't believe, but I did get inspired to check out. Do you guys remember when people were coming from all over
this morning, we have a very revealing look at the war in Ukraine from an American volunteer.
They were coming in from all over the country. Remember, they were like people in Europe were crossing the border to help Ukraine fight. People from America were flying in to help Ukraine fight. What happened to those people?
No, and as you.
So I wanted. What did I do here? I want to check out. I want to see if I can find those video, see what's going on, because I remember early on when this is what all people were talking about.
Of night with little fanfare on departure.
The holster.
A pair of foreign fighters who had taken up the Ukrainian cause. Hundreds, if not thousands, of international combatants have come to Ukraine's aid. Much like the leaders of NATO, pledging support at the summit in Lithuania. But this small group has had enough. The train will take them home.
They've had enough.
The past few weeks on the Eastern Front have been the final straw. Ukraine's counter-offensive has struggled to achieve its objectives.
We're stuck!
As the Russians deploy mass artillery and minefields to slow the Ukrainians down.
Who's out there yelling?
The fighting has been brutal, although no one was killed in this incident.
Bro.
For the foreign fighters, there is a refuge near the front. A modest house in eastern Ukraine where the door is always open. And we met an Irishman there, a heavy machine gunner, who's been fighting in Ukraine for the past 17 months.
What is it like right now on the front line, the 0 point?
Zero line, it's horror. It's horror. There is just, it's a genocide. It's slaughter. There is just people dead everywhere. Russians dead, Ukrainian people dead, Ukrainian soldiers dead, just left there. Just left there, and I don't know why.
Reese Byrne says he was almost killed a few weeks ago as his multinational unit prepared to attack the line.
It keeps disconnecting all the bells, bro. We were told there's a Russian trench line, and our job is to go into the trenches and clear them out, hold them until auxiliary units come, and then we go home.
They were taken to a staging area, but they had no air cover, and a pair of Ukrainian tanks withdrew. In the distance, another tank approached, the unit assuming it was friendly.
But you're doing all right, though.
Yeah, I'm good.
But it wasn't. Soldiers took cover in the woods, hoping that assistance would arrive.
Any station, this is Bravo. Can anybody hear me? Can anybody read me? Go!
As the light fell, a Ukrainian truck pulled up, and the survivors scrambled in the back. But Byrne said they were spotted. A Russian tank giving chase.
Let's go!
Now we have the tank literally coming out, starting to chase us. And that's terrifying. When you see a big T-72 coming for you and you're in a Humvee pickup, yeah, it's like a hot knife through butter. You're finished. So again, all of us are screaming, drive the Humvee, drive the Humvee. I was going mental. Yeah. I've never done like those big mountains like you have, but I want to, bro.
This sanctuary is run by a muscular pastor, a New Zealander called Owen Panoma.
What's the point of this place, this house?
Be some sort of support, you know, to sit there. Where are you from? You got kids, you know, basically to take their mind off war.
No one is pressured to communicate, but the trauma will often make itself known.
They sleep talk. They scream. Night time, you come out and go to the toilet, think, oh, he's all right, and the guys wake up, you know, they don't realise that what they're doing. They may not be aware of what they're actually doing because it's quiet here. Out there, it's not.
Byrne and a fellow fighter race to make their train, with the past quickly stuffed in their rucksacks. But they can't leave it all behind.
It's the only ticket I have, Hal. This is a ticket you
with me, boy.
These men have spent months on the edge.
Just become a memory from me, yeah? That's all it'll be, just...
They said, I'm out. Here's another one. Here's another one. And then after this, I want to watch a video where they interview Ukrainians and their thoughts on their thoughts on the war, right?
Here who fought in it. Ukraine's army is preparing to try and recapture the key southern city of Kherson and fighting off Russian attacks in the northeast. Ukraine's president says Russian artillery strikes are, quote, driving people to their deaths. Holly Williams is in Kyiv, that's Ukraine's capital city, with more on the story. Holly, good morning to you.
Good morning. We've been reporting on this war now for over 8 months, and it's extremely rare to get an unvarnished account of what it's like at the tip of the spear as Ukraine battles Russia's invasion. But that's exactly what we heard from an American who volunteered to fight with Ukrainian forces. And we should warn you that his interview contains some disturbing material.
You could hear shooting, but then you could also hear grunts and people like fighting to the death with their bare hands. It's a very unique sound when you hear that many death rattles.
He's from Tennessee, he told us, and came to fight in Ukraine because he was horrified by the Russian invasion. He wants to be known only by his call sign, Elvis.
The carnage you're describing sounds like something out of World War II.
Yeah. This is nothing like any conflict in the past 70 to 80 years. This war is not sustainable for either side.
On the front line in southern Ukraine, he says he repeatedly witnessed Russian forces using white phosphorus munitions.
It comes down extremely slow, but there's nothing you can do, and everything it touches just incinerates.
Including this incident.
Probably about 20 or 30 guys burning alive, and several gunshots, because there was nothing else they do. So a lot of guys have suicide pistols, and you'd hear them scream, and then they would say goodbye and then blow their own heads off.
So you actually heard 20 to 30 soldiers being burned alive by white phosphorus?
Yes, ma'am.
And some of them committing suicide
Yes,
with
ma'am.
their own pistols?
Yes, ma'am.
Elvis, that must have been horrific.
It's war. At least that's what I tell myself.
He admits that he's traumatised and fears one of his former comrades could commit suicide because of what they went through together.
Do you still think this is a righteous war?
Yes, absolutely. We're fighting pure evil. Anybody in the West that asks Ukraine to just do peace talks, they need to go through these villages. They need to see what's been done to these people. If China invaded the US, hypothetically,
it never happened, but okay.
Leveled Los Angeles, leveled Seattle, Portland, massacred thousands. Do you think the US would just sue for peace? No.
It's crazy, bro. So apparently, the summary of estimated casualties is 180 to 250,000 Russians are dead. 46 to 70,000 Ukrainians are dead. But 13,000 civilians on the Ukrainian side are dead. Damn,
Russia
bro.
has previously denied using white phosphorus munitions in Ukraine. Elvis told us that if other Americans are thinking of volunteering with Ukraine's military, they should...
So
what is this? What is this they caught on camera?
This incident.
Probably about 20 or...
That's phosphorus, right? That's not legal in war. Russia's using it, burning people alive. That shit is this fake? Man. In the meantime, let's watch these interviews with Ukrainians, what they think. So before we watch this, just from my understanding, from just using ChatGPT, what I've learned so far is that 52% of Ukrainian citizens are favoring ending the war, negotiating to end the war. 38% want to continue fighting until victory. 64% support direct negotiations between Ukraine and Russia. But 96% of Ukrainians want Russia to leave all the occupied territories that they've taken, including Crimea. You know, 50% of Ukrainians, no, 3% of Ukrainians think that Trump is negotiating a fair agreement. It's brokering a fair agreement. So they want peace, but they don't trust the negotiations between the U.S. and Russia. And to be honest with you, just from hearing some of the stuff, like, man, Ukraine they getting hosed. They're gonna lose 18% of their country. They're gonna have to give, the U.S. a percentage of their mining and stuff like that, which I understand because we loaned them a bunch of money to fight this war, so that's how we get paid back. But Russia's definitely gonna win these negotiations for sure. But people are dying, man. This is sad. Let's hear what people think about the war.
Якщо Трамп запропонує угоду, але з компромісами для Росії, там, наприклад, що ті території, які він окупував, він так і буде їх контролювати поки що, але взамін на це закінчиться війна або її активна фаза. Як би ви до цього поставились?
Ну, як на мене, це було і під час АТО, що землі, які вони захопили, то залишились їм, то я не думаю, що Путін захоче віддавати назад землі, які вже кров'ю і потім захопили.
Укладе угоду таку на таких умовах, що ми підемо на певні компроміси з Росією, там, зокрема...
Скоріш за все таки буде, на нас буде тиснути зі всіх сторін, тому що всім хочеться вже, щоб не чути про нас. Ми вже всім набридли, за настроєм.
Everybody there has lost somebody.
Так, тому я думаю, в будь-якому випадку буде тиснути на нас і вимагати відмовитися від чогось заради Росії.
Які компроміси, знаєте...
наприклад, контроль над тими територіями, які він захопив.
Я думаю, що воно все одно так і буде. Нічого в тому доброго. Знаєте, тут я завжди говорю, що в цій ситуації мені некоректно дуже багато, скажімо, некоректно оцінювати ситуацію, тому що я вже застарий воювати, а мій син замалий воювати. І всі мої думки з того приводу, знаєте, кожен каже, що ти нам розказуєш? Ти вже старий, син малий, тому мовчи і не говори багато.
Як ви би до цього поставились, але... Чому?
Тому що, ситуація така, що країна-агресор нападає, їй ще якісь преференції дають. Я вважаю, це несправедливо. Це дуже фруструє.
Скажу чесно, що я з міста Чернігова. І кожну ніч в нас просто повітряна траса. Тобто шахеди, звуки пострілів, ми всьому цьому живемо. Багато людей втрачають житло, які знаходяться біля лінії кордону. Тому в такому стані скільки ще можливо жити, скільки ще можна продовжувати жувати цю гумку, тобто має бути якесь прийняте рішення. Звичайно, ми всі думаємо, що переговори це в будь-якому разі мають бути на фініші. І якщо зараз буде припинення, це буде людям, звичайно, полегшення велике буде. Тому що люди живуть просто на пігулках, діти не висипаються, повністю ніч – це повітряні тривоги нон-стоп. У Львові це не так відчувається, звичайно. Ми приїжджаємо сюди трошки передихнути, трошки полагодити психіку, а так це просто неможливо. Неможливо працювати, планувати. Всі люди дуже сильно налякані, допомагають ЗСУ, але скільки так може бути? Я думаю, що переговори якась пауза для того, щоб можна було працювати дипломатам, працювати політикам і щось зрушувати з місця, але щоб не гинули люди.
Тут дуже складно відповісти. Допустимо, Херсон, Запоріжжя, і відверто їй шкода. А Донеччина, Луганщина, там вже просто нема до чого вертатися. Грубо кажучи, за ті території я не знаю, чи буде варта кров, а Херсонщина, Дніпро, Запоріжжя, там ще є наші люди, там ще не все перетворено в туху. Відверто.
Завдяки цьому закінчилась би активна фаза або загалом війна в Україні?
Я не можу на це відповісти, тому що може багато бути думок, і я утримуюсь від такого. Одним словом, хотілося б, щоб для нас воно було якось з найменшими такими втратами, найменшими такими негативними якимись. Тобто, щоб було щось погане, було найменше. Але важко дуже сказати, бо дуже багато різних думок і отак кожен собі хоче, щоб було краще, щоб скоріше закінчилося, щоб наші хлопці скоріше прийшли, щоб вже тих смертей стільки не було, розумієте?
Мати контроль над тими територіями, які він окупував, але взамін на це закінчиться активна фаза війни або ж загалом закінчиться війна в Україні. Як би ви до цього поставились?
Я думаю, що так воно і буде. Тобто хотілося б, звичайно, я думаю, що більшість десь літа, я думаю, якщо буде мовна заморозка, то це буде заморозка тих подій, які вже є. Вони, Росія не відступить, Україна віджати свої території теж не може. Тобто, скоріше все, так воно і буде. Просто тут питання, як буде воно розвиватися далі. Чи буде гірше, чи буде краще.
Чи, наприклад, ви погодились на таке, але завдяки цьому так би закінчилась активна фаза війни?
Ми всі прекрасно знаємо, що війна змінила зараз нас всіх і дуже сильно втомила. І тому, звичайно, що хотілося б хоча б на якомусь етапі, щоб воно заморозилося. Але ми не здамося.
Скажіть, будь ласка, а от якщо б була укладена угода, але з компромісом для Росії, наприклад, там контроль над тими територіями, які вона окупувала, чи було б для України це краще? Завдяки цьому війна б закінчилась?
Ми ніколи не зможемо відбудувати то. Ніколи. Ми не будували, вон Львів сиплеться весь. Ми не будували то, що можна було, а зруйнована Україна не відбудує ніколи. Ніколи.
Damn, bro. So sad, fam.
Вони гарантувати це припинення вогню, це в першу чергу, тому що у нас припинення вогню йде з 2014 року, як всі ж це наблюдають. І їхні гарантії це, не хочеться казати матом, тому воно слова їхнє нічого не стоїть, тільки для камери і все.
So I've never been to Ukraine, but I've been to Russia.
I am Tanya Okeanova. I'm so sorry.
By the way, I've been to Norway too. We were just talking about Norway, and I've been to Oslo before. Oslo was beautiful, very clean, very expensive. So I want to learn a little bit about Norway. So we'll watch those videos here soon. But let's see what Russians think about the war.
Sorry. With the free press from Moscow, Russia.
More than 1 million Russians and Ukrainians are estimated to have been killed or wounded in the grinding, nearly 3-year war, known here as the Special Military Operation. Western media publications have suspended their work inside Russia as the cost of speaking your mind freely skyrocketed. Criticizing the government or the army, or simply calling the war by its name, has become grounds for arrest. I was born and raised in Moscow before moving to New York more than a decade ago.
So on a rare occasion that I am here, I figured I simply must use this opportunity to talk to my fellow compatriots on the eve of Trump's second presidency, the 3rd anniversary of the war in Ukraine, and the 25th year of Vladimir Putin's rule.
Given the circumstances, I was stunned how many people were brave enough to talk to me on the record, and how forthcoming they were with their opinions.
Скажите, как изменилась ваша жизнь за последние 3 года? Или изменилась ли как-то вообще?
Таких изменений нет.
Изменений нет?
Да. В лучшую сторону, не считаю, таких изменений нет. Так, как обычно, да, живем.
Дорого стало. Нам, да, все очень дорого. С чем-то ты не согласен, с чем-то ты согласен. Не знаю, в общем, можно ли это говорить, на суду не посадят. Все равно постоянно чувствуешь какое-то давление. Я люблю Россию, русских, не государство.
Скажите, а как изменилась жизнь?
You got Americans that love the Russian government and the Chinese government. You got Americans that love them. And these citizens aren't here. They're afraid to speak on it. But I do know that there's definitely Russians that love their government. There's definitely Chinese people, citizens who love their government. So it's just culture. Culture's different, but there's also internet these days. So, and it's just so different, man, over there, bro. Like I remember going there the social media apps they use. It's just different. I mean, they use Instagram, don't get me wrong, but they're not like on Facebook and stuff like that.
Жизнь за последние 3 года? Ну, естественно. Ну, если бы не вот это вот СВО, конечно, просто жалко наших ребят. И люди не понимают, что они убивают наших ребят, и тех ребят тоже жалко. Тогда было просто все супер-присупер.
Я улетаю, когда пою я в раю. Улетаю и жить вечно буду, не вспоминая, как там было в аду. Я навсегда дома, 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 дома буду. На Новый год, на знакомство.
Знакомство, да, надо познакомиться. Вот это 40 было. Дядка, ты вредил.
Да, у меня 2 двоюродных брата, они там у меня. Они контрактники. Они подписали контракт, они там воюют, да. 2 брата двоюродных.
До сих пор там находятся.
До сих пор там находятся, я с ними очень хорошо, близко общаюсь, как бы созваниваемся, переписываемся.
Они пошли туда по...
Ну, у одного было 3 ранения, у второго, ну, ему повезло больше, скажем так, у него ранений нет, но при этом они все как бы служат. Ну, отпускают в отпуск с самого начала вот этой всей ситуации, да. Короче, допустим, ты представляешь, вот есть какая-то определенная часть, там есть 2 танка. Один танк ездит, но не стреляет. Другой стреляет, но не ездит. И они их соединили, короче, тросом, и вот так они воюют. То есть один танк тащит другой, тот, который едет, он не может, короче, стрелять, а стреляет тот, который сзади. Представляешь? Ну это вот в этом вся Россия.
All right, well, I think we got a general consensus. None of the people in either of these countries want to be fighting this war, bro. You know, the people and the governments are 2 different entities, and they're just different worlds, bro. Thank God we live in America where we can. People talk shit about our voting system and our government all the time, but we can vote people out. You know what I mean? It's a lot harder for people to finesse a lifetime of dictatorship here in this country because of the checks and balances. It's not perfect, but it's the best in my opinion. But we're always learning, and that opinion could change, you know? Things happen in this world, so... With that being said, let's check out this clip on this video on what exactly makes Norway so great. So I visited Oslo, Norway with my wife. We only went for a day. I remember just it being clean, lots of businesses, the restaurants, lots of bars and breweries. And then I also remember, what am I doing here? Oh, I also remember how expensive everything it was. This was, mind you, this was like 6 years ago, 7 years ago. And I remember ordering a burger, just a burger, no fries, just a burger and a beer. And it came out to like $45 for that one burger and that one beer. And I was like, whoa. This was during a time where I could get a burger and a beer anywhere for $12, $15. No, you can't, Chris. Now you can't. Now a beer and a burger is $25. But back then, I could get a beer and a burger for $15, bro. You know? So when I got a $45 ticket while I was in Norway, I was like, damn. And then you would use the bathroom. You'd have to pay to use the bathroom, the public bathrooms, which I don't mind because the bathrooms were clean. You know, here you might go into a public bathroom and there's homeless people living in it. You know what I mean? Nonetheless, let's see what makes Norway so great. And this is inspired by, we were watching the press conference with Trump and the Prime Minister of Norway. And Trump was just, you know, glazing Norway. And I've heard a lot of great things about Norway. So let's check out what makes their economy perfect. That's what people say all the time, that Norway's economy is perfect. Even though they got $45 burgers, let's see what makes it perfect, because maybe it balances out.
This is Norway. Norway is a remarkable country that has time and time again been used as the poster child for a socialist, capitalist, mixed economy done right. The country boasts one of the highest GDPs per capita in the world, falling only behind Switzerland and a select group of micronations. The country has a robust trade surplus, one of the highest national life expectancies, an extremely skilled workforce with one of the highest proportion of university graduates of any country in the world, a very, very low unemployment rate, and international recognition as a place that is very easy to do business. What is more remarkable is that Norway has achieved this while also being one of the most economically equal countries in the world. After taxes,
Beautiful.
a single individual from the bottom 20% of income earners in Norway still earns on average a quarter of what their top 20% income earner would. Now, this still sounds pretty unfair, but compared to the OECD,
Still seems pretty unfair. What, everyone should make the same amount? Shouldn't be based on performance. Because to me, if the poorest people still make a quarter of what the highest paid people make, that's pretty damn fair. That's close. Because you got people busting their ass and damn. Definitely not the case in the United States.
OECD average, which has top fifth earners making an income 10 times that of their bottom fifth counterparts, this 4 times disparity is remarkably equal. The good news keeps on coming when considering working conditions. Norway has extremely robust workers' protections, meaning that social issues like working extremely long hours or people needing second jobs to support themselves is very rare. In fact, the OECD Better Life Index notes that only 3% of employees work very long hours when compared to the OECD average of 11% or the American average of 33%. All of this contributes to the citizens of Norway being some of the happiest in the world, despite their country looking like this for half the year. So, what is their secret? Norway, by all standards, should be the model that most citizens would want to replicate in their own countries. So why haven't other countries adopted similar economic policies to those in Norway? Is this country just a lucky outlier, or could this success be replicated in other economies around the world? Well, the truth is that Norway wasn't always this prosperous. This is Norway in the 1960s. It was an economy mainly based on fishing, with a GDP similar in size to underdeveloped countries like Bangladesh or Nigeria.
Damn.
Now, in fairness, Norway's population was and still is far smaller than these other countries, and the average Norwegian back then had a quality of life similar to their European neighbours in Spain or Greece. But Norway in the 1960s was still a far cry from the economic powerhouse it is today. This all started to change though in May of 1963, when the Norwegian government asserted sovereign rights over natural resources in this area of the North Sea. This was basically the government saying that this ocean here, this is ours now. Oh, if we happen to find any oil here, that's ours too. Now, fortunately, Norway was a member of NATO, and so it did not get the freedom treatment that other countries did when they tried out this nationalising business in the 1960s. But 6 years later, in 1969, a ship called the Ocean Viking struck oil in the North Sea, and from that, oil production in the region exploded, because they found a lot of oil. Like a lot. Like 1.6 million barrels a day a lot. This meant that in the mid-1970s, Norway produced more oil per capita than any other country in the world. And even today, it is only beaten out by Kuwait, the United Arab Emirates, and Saudi Arabia. Now, I know what you are thinking, and no, this is not a story about another country that just got rich off oil and now everybody in the country is living like a freshly signed NFL player. It is actually the opposite. Rather than getting drunk off the oil wealth they had discovered, the Norwegian government was very prudent with the revenue from these finite resources. The oil boom caused Norway's GDP to grow over 5 times in the 1970s, growing from $12 billion to $65 billion in this period. But this newfound wealth was not being generated through private companies like Shell, Exxon or BP, but rather a publicly run and owned company called Statoil. This meant that the profits from oil and natural gas sales were not going to fill the pockets of private shareholders, but rather directly to the government. This made the Norwegian government very, very rich, meaning that if they wanted to, they could have easily gone on a public spending spree building fancy cities and public infrastructure while also reducing taxes.
Or growing their military.
Just like many other countries have done in a similar position. This kind of approach would have been very popular amongst citizens because short term it meant less taxes and a boost to quality of life. But they didn't. And today, income and business taxes in Norway are still among some of the highest in the world. Fortunately for Norway, the government had the foresight to realise that oil wealth was not forever, and that the citizens of Norway would not be satisfied if they had to go back to fishing in a generation's time. So, the government invested the money into a piggy bank. A very large piggy bank called a sovereign wealth fund. In fact,
something Trump's trying to do, right?
This is the largest sovereign wealth fund in the world, beating out China's State Investment Corporation, which is remarkable considering that China has a population 270 times larger than Norway's.
Crazy.
This is a fund that belongs to the people of Norway. The rationale is that this oil and these natural resources were originally the property of the Norwegian people, and so it is they who should receive the revenue from the sale of those resources. This means that every man, woman and child who is a citizen of Norway essentially has around $200,000 invested into what is a giant hedge fund. Now, this money is unfortunately not accessible by these citizens to spend on gold-plated Lamborghinis or super yachts. The money itself is actually not even accessible to the Norwegian government. In fact, only the profit generated from these investments is used to fund things like education, which helps to explain the very skilled workforce, a very strong welfare system, public infrastructure, and of course, reinvestment into the fund itself. In 2017, the fund made an incredible $131 billion from its investments. Now, this fund is a very diverse portfolio of stocks, bonds, cash, commodities, but what it does invest in is not nearly as interesting as what it does not invest in. The Norwegian government set up an ethical council that oversees investing decisions of all of the fund, and it has excluded investing in things like weapons manufacturers, tobacco companies, and companies that have caused severe environmental damage, or companies that have breached workers' rights and labour laws. Additionally, in an effort to diversify where they get their money from, the fund is also forbidden to invest in fossil energy companies. Perhaps most interesting of all is that there is one country on the planet that is expressly forbidden to invest. And you could probably hazard a guess as to what that is. Yeah, that's right. It's good old Norway. This means that all of the investments of this fund are actually in foreign companies, securities and commodities. Now, despite the massive political power that gives Norway to influence foreign companies, it also means that the fund's performance is independent of the Norwegian economy. Now, this fund was a fantastic piece of forethought by the Norwegian government, and practically means that Norway is now the national equivalent of the guy that wins the lottery, keeps his day job, and invests his money into a stock portfolio. It certainly is not as cool, and it does not get as much attention as blowing it all on bombastic displays of wealth, but it does mean that they will be safe and secure for generations to come. To finish it up, it is only fair to look at some of the economic issues that are present in Norway. First and foremost is that it still has an incredibly high cost of living compared to wages.
Hell yeah, it does.
Given the very high taxes, the average Norwegian worker is bringing home about $3,200 a month. Now, this is far higher than the US average of $2,730 per month, but it does not go nearly as far because Norway is an expensive place. A mid-range restaurant meal in America tends to run about $50 for 2 people without drinks. In Norway, expect to be paying about $92.
Told you.
A monthly utility bill for US gas, electricity, water and garbage is expected to be about $130. That same bill in Norway is $176. A new, very basic family car, such as a base model Volkswagen Golf, can easily be had in America for around $20,000. In Norway, that same car would cost you $36,473, which is particularly ironic given the proximity to where these cars are actually manufactured. Now, the citizens of Norway do almost universally agree, though, that they are happy to put up with these high taxes and this incredibly high cost of living for everyday items because in return, they do not have to worry about serious economic hardship. Nobody in Norway is going to go bankrupt because of a medical situation. Nobody has to worry about taking on crippling debt to get an education, and they do not have the fear of being homeless if they lose their jobs. So, is Norway really the perfect economy? Should it be what every treasurer hangs a poster of above their bed to look at night? Well, no, not really. To anyone who has watched this channel before, all 2 of you, you will know that I am a huge fan of planned social democratic economic systems, and Norway is a great example of such a system. They have done everything right with the opportunities that they have been given, but they were still extremely lucky, and expecting that every country can get to where Norway is today just by copying and pasting their current government fiscal policies is foolish.
Yeah.
That being said, if you do find yourself in charge of a country that has won the oil lottery or is riding the high of any other economic boom...
Yeah, so it sounds like, you know, they won the lottery. They won the lottery, but they were smart about it. I still don't understand why they would tax their citizens so much when they have literally the biggest sovereign wealth fund in the world with 100x less citizens is like China, for example. And so people say we should, I always hear people like when there's street interviews and stuff like that, the people always bring up Norway and America should be more like Norway. So, you know, just by watching this video, you can see why America cannot emulate what Norway has done. Number one, you know, even if we won the oil lottery like Norway did, we have 330 million people that live here versus their 5.5. So just from that, and then like, you know, broad social programs are a lot harder to scale when you have, you know, almost 100 times more citizens, more people living in your country. The other thing is we don't have a sovereign wealth fund. We're in a deficit. We're trying to, you know, get rid of the deficit that we're in, all the debt that we're in, so we can start a sovereign wealth fund. And I think America would do an amazing job at it. We would invest in companies and pass those revenues on to the citizens. The other thing is Norway's more of a social democracy where we're more of a free market capitalist society, which I don't mind. I like the way the USA operates in that sense. I do think we can do better in other ways, but I don't, you know, I'm for free education and universal health care and generous unemployment benefits and strong social safety nets. I'm for that. I just think it can be done in other ways. When you're as big as the USA, you're as powerful as the USA, we can be creative and figure out ways of funding these things better with a more efficient government, which I think they're working on. And sovereign wealth funds, gold visas, like all these things, although they might all not work, we should be doing more of that. Taxation, Norway has very high taxes. They say the USA has overall lower taxes. We've seen that 50% of Americans pay no taxes, but they're always saying that everybody else should be paying taxes, more taxes, right? Um, and then here's the big thing. This is why I mentioned military in the middle of the video. Norway has a small military. They have no global policing responsibilities. Like they were able to claim a part of the ocean where the oil is, and because they're part of NATO and nobody wants to mess with NATO because of America and the amount of money we spend on our military, they have the luxury of being able to do that without having to fight for that oil. Imagine if they weren't part of NATO. Russia would scoop that up real quick. China scoop that up real quick, you know? But a lot of these countries and American citizens, they seem to just like just walk past that, right? You know, American people, especially the top 50% of income earners, because we're paying all the taxes. You know, a lot of those tax dollars are going towards funding a military that keeps the world at peace, at least at much more peace than it is today. Like there's obviously it's not perfect and there's bad wars going on. We just watched a terrible war that's going on. But imagine the amount of wars that would be happening without American intervention. And so they don't have to spend that money. And a lot of countries that are part of NATO don't have to spend that money. And Trump is tired of it. You got a country like Norway, who we brag about their economy. They have the biggest sovereign wealth fund in the world. And they don't pay their fair share in military policing. They don't have to because the US is doing it. And here we are, we're looking at this country like, damn, our citizens don't have all those perks. We don't have a sovereign wealth fund with trillions of dollars in it. Maybe we should negotiate a better deal with NATO. Maybe Norway should be doing more. Maybe Switzerland should be doing more. Maybe the UK and Canada and all these other countries should be doing more. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but as I'm learning more about geopolitics and economics and macroeconomics and all this, man, Trump is starting to make some sense, bro. I don't know about you guys. I'm not saying that the way he's going about it is smart. It's pissing off a lot of people, but there's definitely concern here. And I didn't mean to go into this, but I'm just pointing out all the reasons why it's difficult to emulate what Norway has created. It is an exception to the rule. And they don't do a lot of the heavy lifting that America does. I still think America is the greatest country because of all the heavy lifting that we do. And we've compromised our own people to protect global interest. You know, a lot of the spending that Norway would have to spend in military, they can redirect towards social services because they don't have to spend it. You know, America spends almost $1 trillion a year on military. So the TLDR on that is what works for 5 million people doesn't always scale to 330, right? The U.S. has deep ideological divides on government's role in the economy. And the U.S. focuses more on defense and global influence, while Norway focuses inward on citizen welfare, which is what Trump is trying to do, which is probably why he's speaking to the Prime Minister of Norway, and he wants to go visit Norway because he wants to focus inward on citizen welfare. I don't know if that's good for Norway, but they don't seem to care as much. You know, they're good with it. They seem like they have a good relationship. The Prime Minister and Donald Trump. So we'll see what happens. Maybe Trump is going over there to learn more about inward focus on citizen welfare, even though we still have to spend money on defense. So, yeah, that was good. I think I learned a bunch. I didn't think I was going to be learning what I've learned by looking at how Norway is such a great country, but I feel smarter. I feel like I can have a deeper conversation on that topic the next time it comes up, because people always bring up Switzerland, Norway, all these countries when we're talking about comparing countries and economies and stuff like that. All right, let's continue here. I'm not sure why my chat is not working all of a sudden. Save. Let me see the overlays. Thanks, I'll do. You know, I be trying to make sense, bro. I be trying to make sense. Why is this? All right. So far we've talked about, we got to see the press conference of the Prime Minister of Norway and Trump. We looked at the issues, ongoing issues and the negotiation talks with Ukraine and Russia. We watched citizens from Russia and Ukraine talk about how they feel about the war. We looked at some of the data behind the war. We got to talk about Norway, their economy, what makes their country so good, and why America and the rest of the world can't really emulate that. I thought that was very intriguing. And so since we were talking about communism and different governments, I wanted to dig deeper into communism and stuff like that. So let's watch this video. I'm not going to go deep into it, but it's interesting. And I like this guy, the interviewer. He's got some clips that have gone viral, but I do think he was fair in his interview. There was no gotcha moments. It was genuine questions. You guys watch it and comment what you think.
No. Are you?
Yes.
Do you want more people to be communists?
Yes, I would love more people to be communists.
Oh, awesome.
More people agree with communism than the average person might think that they do.
What do you think are the biggest misconceptions in the West within communism itself?
Yeah, I think people in the West have been kind of, I don't want to say brainwashed, but they've definitely been affected by the propaganda that the US government has put out, that communism is somehow a dictatorship, or that communism is forcing people to do something, or that communism is only hunger and, loss. But that's not true.
Yeah.
We are ripe for a socialist revolution all across the world. Capitalism is failing, and now is the time for the workers to come together and take power.
Okay. By what standard, when you say capitalism is failing, by what standard do you mean? Like, what metrics are you looking at?
Yeah, I mean, we look at it all across the world as well as all across the United States. Food prices are rising no matter what we do. There's insane inflation. People are being pushed out of their homes, unable to make rent, and rents are only rising. There are huge buildings in downtown Seattle now that are residential buildings that are completely empty while people live on the street. And I do not think...
Real quick, we just watched Russians being interviewed, and they were complaining about how expensive things have gotten in their country. And we know for a fact in China, there are cities full of empty buildings, and they still have a lot of homeless and poor. I've never seen an example of communism being fruitful, unless you guys have seen something that I can go study. I've not seen it. In my opinion, America's not perfect, but we've been around 250 years and we've done shit that unheard of.
I don't think that that is a sign of a society that is progressing. I think that that is a sign of a capitalist society that is regressing.
Okay. What was your name, by the way?
My name's Maddie.
Maddie, I'm Eliezer.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. I wanted to ask you, Maddie, because like for me, one of the big turnoffs when I think of socialism or communism is the application of it. So when we look at capitalism, it's more like a free market. Obviously there's restrictions on it, but typically it's voluntarily, right? So if I want to purchase something from someone, they can decide to sell it to me or vice versa. But my question is, within, how do we apply it? So if the majority of society is restricting themselves from actually getting onto the plan of communism, are we going to require force to get them on board?
Yeah, I like to think no.
Okay.
I mean, what we're trying to do is build a mass party. And that is a voluntary party, you know? I think that as capitalism continues to fail, more and more people across the world, as well as in the US, will decide voluntarily through their experience that capitalism can no longer continue in this way.
Okay.
In the way that, I talk to people on the street every day and they're like, it's not voluntary that I have to pay rent. It's not voluntary that I have to pay hundreds of dollars on groceries or go to work.
I'll fix.
Work $60 or 60 hours a week. That's not a voluntary part of capitalism.
Because we can like engage in it, but we're like kind of forced to, right? Is what you're saying? Okay.
Yeah.
The reason I asked that though is, wouldn't you say we're supposed to live in a democracy right now?
Yeah.
And so if the majority of democracy does not want communism, are we just going to use propaganda to try to get them on board through a long-term process, or is it going to be through force at a certain point?
I mean, we as communists understand that, force happens sort of throughout history when one part of society imposes their will on another part of society.
Mm-hmm.
For example, that's how capitalists and billionaires and CEOs, the ruling class, imposes their will on us by committing violence against us.
Mm-hmm.
Police violence, as well as like the day-to-day violence of capitalism. But a mass movement is not going to work unless we have the majority, unless we have the masses.
Okay.
And if we can gather the masses together under one banner, under one red banner of communism, then there won't need to be violence and there won't need to be like a terrible war. If we have the vast majority of people, 99% of Americans are workers, if we can organize the workers, then that would be the more peaceful solution. Arguably more peaceful than what's happening now, where 99% of the workers are being oppressed, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, thank you for sharing that. What do you say though, like let's say we can actually implement communism, but there's quite a few people within that little society that we have that are not adhering to making decisions for the greater good. What would we have to do to them? Would we let them just keep doing what they do, or would we have to kind of set some restrictions on them?
Well, if we're talking about like during an actual revolution, there is a point where we would need to protect the interests of the workers as a whole, and like I like to think that people who have come together under one political banner to improve society would also come together to protect that society, And we've seen that kind of how people come together to protect their own. Like, for example, here in the autonomous zone that happened in 2020, there were people who protected the interests of the whole against, interlopers or people who were trying to disturb the peace or whatever. Like, throughout history, humans will come together to protect their own. And so hopefully we wouldn't have to like implement violence against people, But generally, when people have formed a society that they believe is just and good, they will do what they need to do to protect that and to protect their own interests and their children and, their loved ones.
You just said an important word, just and good. What is just to you?
Yeah, I would say just is equality, true equity and true equality and fairness and equalness of opportunity, which I think we've kind of been told is the way of life in America today, but more and more people are waking up to the fact that it is not just and it is not equal, and capitalism does not allow for true equality. And we believe that if we can smash capitalism and smash class society, we can achieve the most equal society that the world has ever seen.
Guys, I got no sponsors, so I figured why not sponsor myself? And I need
to agree with me that something that would be
from your pocket, because that's Jordan.
And can you also agree with me that something that would be just is people agreeing that people have bodily autonomy and human rights?
Yes.
And we should not infringe upon those, otherwise they are no longer rights?
Yeah,
okay.
I agree.
So you said like equity, we have to reach equity. Wouldn't you say that we have to reach equity through a means of force?
Well, I think that...
Because for example, if I'm a billionaire and you want to take my money, and I say, no, I'm not going to give you my money, what's going to be the step to actually get me to give you my money?
Yeah, I think that reappropriating the wealth of billionaires...
Oh, you guys are good. You guys are good.
Reappropriating the wealth of billionaires through force is a small price to pay for making their lives better and freeing the 99% of people. I think that is a very small price to pay.
So is it fair to say, I don't want to misrepresent you, but at a certain point we are going to have to infringe on people's bodily autonomy?
Well, if you believe that like owning a bunch of buildings, owning billions of dollars worth of assets is someone's body, then sure. But I don't believe that that's someone's body. We would never like want to infringe on their bodily autonomy. We just don't believe in the accumulation of like personal property in such a way. Or at least at that point it's past personal property. At that point it's huge amounts of capital that should not belong to a single person.
Okay, because from a philosophical level, the way I would see it is that rights are only as real as your ability to defend them.
Yeah.
And the ability to defend them would be predicated on your force. Can you agree?
I think your ability to, I think rights are sort of established by the morality of the ruling class at the time. I think that a ruling class can establish their own morality and sort of impose that and impose their ideas of what is just and good on, the entirety of society in the way that the ruling class imposes their ideas of morality on us, being like, okay, you're supposed to obey the police. The police are here to, protect what is just and good and protect your rights. But we see that that's not true anymore, And so what I think, when you ask me about what is just and what is right, I think that it is not right for 1% of people to hoard wealth and to enslave the rest of the world. Okay. And I think taking their wealth and reappropriating it for the good of society is a small price to pay for the betterment of society.
Yeah, but what do you say with capitalism? Everyone is, like you were saying earlier a little bit about it, how you have to pay your rent, but you don't want to, but you kind of have to, right? With capitalism though, if I start a company, let's say me, I'm Mexican, my parents were from Mexico. Let's say we want to start a company to get ahead ourselves. And then at a certain point, we start doing really good. We have 50 employees. We have a lot of customers. Everyone's winning. Who is losing in that situation?
Yeah. I think that, small business owners are they're a very small part of, capitalism in general now.
That's not true. We did the research on that, and maybe last week it was. Small businesses are the majority of employers in this country. This idea that big corporations and billionaires own everything. Yeah, sure. Wealthy people own a lot of things, and there's private equity firms, there's venture capitalist firms, there's BlackRock and all this, and all that good stuff, right? But there's still a huge majority of small business owners that run this country as well. We don't have the power that a lot of these corporations have, but as people, we have gun rights. We do have a lot of power in this country. That's not the case in all communist countries. That's not the case. You give all the power to one individual more so. Like, I would rather give the power to checks and balances and different levels of people than one individual or one government that runs everything. It turns into a dictatorship every time.
It's kind of what capitalism used to be. It used to be only the merchant class and small business owners. But after a while, those things, people like that are being put out of business all the time by big corporations. And so
another thing too is, it's not just big corporations, it's technology, it's trends, it's what the consumers are moving to. Amazon couldn't put out small businesses if American people, if consumers didn't love same day shipping, didn't love that the service. They couldn't put these businesses out. That's what the people are choosing to. It's not like they're being forced at gunpoint to buy from Amazon. Unfortunately, that's what people do, and then they adjust over time, and all of a sudden you start getting movements, support small business, that type of thing. The other thing is actually let me run it back just to make
capitalism
sure.
used to be. It used to be only.
She said capitalism used to be. We also don't run like a true capitalist society. I don't think so, because we have so many welfare and social programs. They're not the best by any means, but we do have many of them. And a lot of times, look at with all of these illegal immigrants that were coming in, they were part of these social programs more so than a lot of American citizens. And that's coming from experience, from family members and stuff, like not getting the necessary help that they needed from our social programs, but their new neighbors that just moved into this country don't pay no taxes. They're getting all the welfare they need. So I don't like, people want to blame it on the systems that we're using, but if the people within our system just were faithful to the system, it'd probably be working a lot better what we have in this country. And even with that being said, I just don't see a country and I've been to Russia, I've been to China, I've been all over Eastern Europe, all over Western Europe, all over South America, all over North America, all over the world. I just don't know a country I would rather live in, speaking from experience. And I understand visiting is different. I'm not telling you guys I've been to China once. I've been many times for months at a time. Same thing with Russia, many times. Same thing with all over the world. Now, Now, there are some parts of the world that are beautiful, amazing, and great to visit, but to live there and visit are two different things. And I think a lot of people miss out on that as well. I hear people all the time, oh, I would live there. Are you sure? That comes with different responsibilities now versus just visiting, right?
Only like, you know, the merchant class.
And it happens here in America too. People visit America. It's what the biggest tourist country, like the country with the most tourism in the world. Let me make sure that that's true. But let's say it's in the top 10, right? People come here and they want to live here. And then people will literally risk their lives to live here. But there's also people that visit here, think they love it, and then they move here, and they move here and they realize it's not what they want, right? So apparently Spain is number one, United States is number two. I love Spain, by the way. I love Spain. I went to Barcelona. I had a trip to go to the south of Spain, so and I didn't get to go. I had to cancel that trip, but I've been to Barcelona. Beautiful country, beautiful city. More touristy than the rest of it, but the country of Spain is so diverse, it's so different. I was gonna do the Iberian Peninsula tour, so we were gonna fly into. I had the flights booked, all the hotels booked, and then a family member of us. We had a tragedy in the family the day we were supposed to fly out, but we were gonna go into Portugal, into Lisbon, and then take trains and flights and make our way down the peninsula into three different cities in the south of Spain, and then make our way into Morocco, and then go to three different cities in Morocco, do the desert. It was gonna be dope. I had it all mapped out, hotels booked, flights booked, lost all that money. Yeah, long story short, I do want to still do that trip, but maybe we'll do it in the summer. I don't know. But it's interesting. Spain is number one. So anyways, I was saying all that to say, America doesn't have a true capitalist society. We have a mix of a lot of different things, and it's our people that vote for these policies, that their voices are heard, and they listen to people who want to be elected and what kind of policies that they're talking about trying to push. And we have checks and balances that push those things when there's enough pressure from the people. So if we wanted a communist country, we would have it. It's trying and it's good that someone who wants to create a communist party is allowed to speak in this country, because what people want, it should be voiced, it should be heard, and then debate and dialogue should be what creates the results. And sometimes the results don't work out that well. But what happens in a lot of countries is once you try communism, you can't really go back, because it turns into a dictatorship, and the same person that you voted in because you thought that's what you wanted stays in power your entire life until they die. And then you better hope there isn't a coup and another extreme party doesn't take over, and now you're down a downhill spiral. Where at least with our country, there's checks and balances, and people can't just do that. People talk about Trump doing it all the time. It's not going to happen. Trump's going to do a third term. No, he's not. And if that does happen, all hell's going to break loose in this country. So the problem with communism, if we do go that route, can we get out of that route? Probably not. So that's why I think a lot of people, once they get, if a communist party was ever to grow and really get any type of traction, once debate and dialogue is pushed in America, I don't think that'll ever be a thing.
Class and small business owners. But after a while, those things, people like that are being put out of business all the time by big corporations. And so in that way, it's like, if you get bigger and bigger, and if your family is getting better and better at their job, eventually they are going to be.
And I know you guys hate when I keep pausing these things, but it's not. It's also funny how she paints this picture like we're trying to protect small businesses from getting put out of business by these big companies. Well, look, consumers are choosing these big companies a lot of times. Not just that, but a lot of small businesses don't go out of business because of competition or a big corporation. It's because they suck. How many times have you guys gone to a small business and the service is whack, the products are terrible, all of that shit, right? Like, come on. Come on. Or they don't pay their rent, or they get their business into a bunch of debt. They don't have the cash flow that they wanted. They're terrible at marketing. It's the free will to try it, and for Americans to be able to do that, I think is what's great. If they fail or not, it's not life ending. She's acting like it's life ending, and we need a communist party to protect these people from that happening. But girl, they gonna be all right. At least they got to try. And some of them might end up creating something that turns into a big corporation. Who knows? But yeah, I don't see this
up against a large corporation.
Yeah.
And very
No,
rarely
Dave,
do small
this is
business
not
owners
haircuts.
win in that situation. They'll
Okay.
constantly be putting out.
Dave, you could read the title. You could read the title of my live stream, brother. It's not haircuts, brother. I haven't done the haircut tutorial in how long? But we do have the Tomb 45 channel, YouTube channel that has like almost 30,000 subscribers, and we drop haircut tutorials twice a week, probably. If you want haircuts, you can go there for sure. But I haven't cut hair in a shop in years, so I don't know if it's been a while since you've been on my channel.
Out of business from that sort of accumulation and that monopolization of the market. And we believe as communists that is an inevitable part of capitalism. It will always continue to the point of imperialism, to the point of monopoly. And so we believe that people should be able to achieve their own destinies in the way that like families like yours might want to do without having to, be constrained by making a profit.
But at a certain point, do you think that'll motivate me or discourage me? If we say, hey, Eliezer, if you make $10 million a year with your business, that you didn't exploit anyone, you had employees, you had great customers, you had a great service, do you think that you setting a threshold and a limit as to how much I can make is going to motivate me and encourage me to show up harder and outcompete my competitors and provide a better value and service? Or do you think it's going to deteriorate me from wanting to move ahead?
I think what motivates people is being able to provide for their loved ones. I think that's what motivates people.
But loved ones like family members?
Family, community, they want to make their community proud. They want to feed their children. They want to, help their friends. They want to, do something good for the people that they love. And I think that if someone was to be told or presented with the opportunity, you can do whatever you want. You are not able to make 10 million, but everyone that you know, everyone that you love, they will have housing for life. They will have free education. They will have free health care. They won't ever have to worry about buying food or paying rent. I think that would open up so much more creativity than just saying you have the opportunity to maybe make $10 million someday in your life. But it's a low opportunity at this point if we look at it realistically. But I think meeting basic requirements.
But you know what it takes to create a $10 million business? And there's how many small businesses are there that do 10 million? Let's see. I've created a portfolio of businesses that do 8 figures a year. I've been able to employ family members, close friends, and not just employ them, but give them a platform to provide a great lifestyle and living for their children. I've been able to help a lot of people, employ over 100 people, thanks to my small businesses. Why do we need a government? Why do I need some dude that's been a lifelong politician that has no idea what business, ain't in the trenches with me, telling me what to do with my business and how much money I can make? Do you not hear the insanity here? And you're right, not everybody needs $10 million in revenues, or $10 million a year. And that's okay. But I don't know if you've noticed, but when it comes to GDP, when it comes to the average income of Americans, it is top tier. It's top tier. Part of the reason why big corporations are so important is because we know that most small businesses fail. And it's not because of lack of information. The information's out there. It's just people don't really want to run big businesses that do $10 million a year. Most people don't want that. Most people are happy with a great paying job at a corporation. And guess what? There are some greedy corporations, but there's some great corporations out there. And people, usually will choose the corporations that give the best benefits. We just talked about how Google is responsible directly and indirectly for over 1.5 million jobs. I've never heard of bad paying Silicon Valley jobs. You know, thank God for some of these corporations that she's so against. And again, they're not perfect. There's checks, but there are checks and balances, privacy laws, things like that. When you have just a government that has so much power, where are the checks and balances? Because it ain't the people. It's just a bad idea, in my opinion. Like, what?
Environments across the board
Her arguments
will
are not
be
good.
a lot better for the creativity and the motivation of the average person.
Wouldn't you say communism values, not worships, but really values the material though? Because right now, let's say I have a big house.
Ooh, that's a bar. Communism values materialism more than most. Look, my family is, I'm first generation born here in America. My mother's from Puerto Rico, and I know it's a territory, but you ask any Puerto Rican if Puerto Rico is America, they're going to look at you like you got 10 eyeballs, okay? And if you've ever been to Puerto Rico, you know it is a lot different than America. Colombia, my dad's from Colombia. And you go to these countries, these people are not depressed because they don't have a PlayStation 5, bro. They're not depressed because they don't have materialistic things. People are happy as hell in Puerto Rico with their small little house, beautiful island vibes, great people, great food, a cold medalla. People are happy as hell. But you got people like this young lady, and it's not like she's doing it out of malice. But she sits on a pedestal and thinks she knows what people want. But cultures are different all over the world. And we have such a diverse country that it's insane that as diverse as our country is, that it works as well as it does, being such a big melting pot. People just get to do what the hell they want. And regardless if somebody has a small house, a brand new car, or an old car versus a person that has a big house and a brand new car, we all know, guys, that does not necessarily dictate your happiness level. There are plenty of people who are wealthy as hell who are depressed, and there's plenty of people who are poor who are happy as hell. And typically in this country, people who are poor, they do get a lot of help. Not as much as some deserve, but that's not necessarily based on bad social, based on our country and the systems that we have in place. Most of the time it's because of lack of efficiency and bad application by our government. Is what I hear. Is what I've experienced. Whether it's the VA, it's run terribly. Social Security, it's run terribly. We saw. Did you guys see the thing on Social Security? Look at this. This is where all the documents for our Social Security is. It's in a freaking mine. It's in an underground mine. It's insane. Insane. They have stacks and stacks and stacks of papers. Why is the USA running their Social Security program here? But immediately we want to say it's capitalism, it's our government, it's our system. Yeah, it's much more complex than that.
Values, not worships, but really values the material though. Because right now, let's say I have a big house and my neighbor has, like, they live in a little box. I would say that's sufficient, like a little shed. Okay. Like, what are we talking about? Like, how much do they actually need? Like food, water, a little box. How much more do they actually need? Is it like a big house, a mansion, 3 bedrooms?
Well, I mean, we definitely think that each person should have enough room for themselves and for their family. I think that, each single person having a 1-bedroom apartment is a basic requirement. I think that that's something that is not only fair to ask for, but it's also reasonable given the amount of housing in the United States at this moment, and especially the amount of empty housing.
Okay.
That we think that every family.
And I can agree with that. But do people have the right to have a one-bedroom apartment in downtown Tampa? And how do we make sure it's fair to everyone? Because there's only so much real estate in downtown Tampa. So a high-rise one-bedroom apartment is that a right for people? And how do we dictate who gets that one-bedroom apartment? Because there's people who would rather have a one-bedroom trailer in rural America, and there's people who would rather, and those people are going to fight over that. They want land in a one-bedroom. How are we going to dictate that? Who gets that? Nobody does. Shit is stupid. It's dumb.
Families should be able to have enough room so that they have privacy, so that they have,
But I think in her heart she means well. People, they grab onto these ideas and they're passionate about it, and I agree with this one, Rich. We need to upgrade and update the USA. The USA is great foundation. The Constitution, I love it. I love what our country's supposed to be about. We don't necessarily do the best at the application of it, but we've gotten better over the years, and we're getting smarter. And we don't need to repeat a lot of the failures that we've made. We need to improve upon them. And we need to constantly evolve. And so I YouTubed this question, real quick. If you love communism so much, why not just move to some communist country? And so here's the response. I haven't watched this video, but what I think he's going to say is something along the lines of, because I'm American and I care for the people and our system's destroying people and communism will fix it. It's dumb. That's what I think he's going to say. Because look, if it's going to fix it, people have gone all over the world. We have social media. We know how these countries are ran. And chances are American people don't want surveillance cameras all over the streets watching them. Zero privacy, zero freedom of speech, zero rights to property, zero rights to ownership, zero rights to any, sure, you're going to get all your basic needs, but at what cost? People died in this country for freedom, for the right to bear arms, for the right to have smaller government, to not be slaves. We talk about being slaves to corporations, but we can quit our jobs. There's a lot, I don't know if y'all know, there's a lot of people who choose to live in their cars, who choose to not live in shelters, to live in the streets. And I'm not saying that that's okay. I'm not saying it's right, but you don't think communist countries have homeless problems? People who prefer that lifestyle as well? Of course they do, but they're not allowed to. Even in Colombia, they used to have what they call cleansings, and they would literally get rid of homeless people. And if they were drug addicts or prostitutes or whatever it may be, they would just kill them. This was a thing in Colombia. Anyways, let's check this out.
But I'm sure you get asked this question: why not go live in these countries if they're such a socialist paradise, so to speak?
Because I love my country, because I'm a patriot, and capitalism is destroying the lives of America's working families. I told you I'm from a small town in Ohio. I believe it's up to.
If you love our country and you're patriotic, you know what our country was created for. What our pioneers ran away from. What they fought for. If you're a patriot, right?
To 4 people that graduated from high school with me who have died from opioids. And, my small town, that's where Smucker's jelly is made. There's, a dairy plant there. And there's
Rich,
also
that's
there was
a bar.
a company that made auto parts and the devastation that they have endured. It was much more prosperous. When I was a kid there in the 90s, it was quite prosperous. But I look at what has happened to my hometown and hometowns like mine all throughout Ohio and Pennsylvania and Michigan and Wisconsin and the Rust Belt of the United States. And I see how living conditions are going down. it shows me that that the American working people need to realize their enemy is not in Russia, their enemy is not in China, it's not in Iran or Venezuela or Cuba. Their enemy is on Wall Street. Their enemy is in the Pentagon, and that the future of the American working class is intrinsically tied up with the people of the world, right? There's no independent destiny for American workers. And that ultimately, if we're going to get a better life for the American people, we have to realize that we share a common destiny with people around the world that are struggling for their national liberation and for socialism against Wall Street. And that, sure, for a time, you know, you could argue that imperialism and this global capitalist system where American banks and corporations dominate the world, sure, it benefited average Americans at one point. But now with the computer revolution, and they basically have decided they don't need this, you know, what they used to call the labor aristocracy, or this well-paid layer of industrial workers in the homeland anymore.
That's basically been stripped away altogether.
Yeah.
Where are the jobs gone? Do we have crazy high unemployment, or were the jobs replaced with something else? Because our country went from my understanding, our country went from being, and this is normal. This is normal in macroeconomics. A country will be more of a labor agriculture type of country in the beginning because their people and manpower is their biggest resource. And then they become a manufacturer or an industrial type of country. That's the evolution of the agriculture and working. And then from industrial, they go to innovation and service and technology. That's where America is at now. If evolving into that country is such a big problem, we would see crazy high unemployments. We wouldn't see what America is right now, which is a powerhouse in 250 years, what it turned into. And people talk shit about America right now, but the whole world's having problems. The whole world has problems. If we really want to get down to the details. But I do think that Americans, you know, they get to call out our country, and it gets blasted on social media because we have freedom of speech. And that's also what makes our country so great, is that we can call out the things that we don't like. We can, you know, and politicians will pay attention to it. Corporations will pay attention to it. And honestly, what I've noticed is that they're just going to pander to the masses, to the majority. Even politicians, regardless of what party you're in, they flip and flop on things all the time just based on what they think is going to get the vote. Nancy Pelosi is a great example of that. She was for tariffs for a long time, and then she flipped because she wanted to just oppose Trump, right? Man.
Yeah. And now is the time for there to be solidarity. And I'm also seeing great signs. You know, the Black Lives Matter movement shows that among millions of white people in the United States realize that racism is no good. They realize that a police state and police state repression and enabling the government to strip away our civil liberties is a bad thing. There's a lot more interracial communities, interracial neighborhoods now, and the ugly curse of racism is starting to be broken down. And many Americans.
Bro, you don't think there's racism in China and Russia? I got called the N-word in Moscow by a group of guys riding bikes past me and Fonz. Me and Fonz are standing there, and they called us the N-word. In China, I don't think there's really racism. It's more so, I mean, there's racism. There's racism everywhere. But in China, it's more so, like when I pulled up to China, even though I'm not black, I don't look Chinese and I don't look white. And so I'm mixed. And so when they saw me, I'm mixed and I'm taller than a lot of them. Straight up, they would ask me to take pictures with me. I had no clue who I am. They'd ask me if I was a basketball player. No clue who I was. And they'd be taking pictures with me, all that stuff. And but I will say the taxi drivers are scammers. They're gonna scam the shit out of you. They're not gonna turn their meters on. It's just a different culture, a different world. But in Moscow, I legit got called the N-word while I was in Moscow. Come on, there's racism everywhere. Communism doesn't change that. What's wrong with these guys, man? What is wrong with these guys? You think you got freedom of religion in communist countries? You think that? Come on, man. This dude is... I was really thinking that they were going to... But I will say this, that first interview that we watched with the young lady, great interview. Good dialogue. There was no gotcha moments. They were just having dialogue. And he was asking questions and she was giving her answers. There was no malice, nothing like that. I respect that. I respect that dialogue. And I think that's how politics should be. So... Yeah, facts. All right. So, man, we've been talking about a lot of different topics. Let's talk about social media is not social anymore. Oh, this was an article with Mark Zuckerberg. And we were talking about brain rot. This is exactly why we have brain rot today. So Mark Zuckerberg, this wasn't something that he just wanted to share, right? He was apparently in a antitrust trial, and he had to give a testimony. And in the testimony, he talked about how social media isn't social anymore. It is just a media platform, pretty much. And they're just feeding people what they want to, what the algorithm deems as, you know, a dopamine fix, pretty much. You know, he's pretty much saying this in the video. I mean, in the antitrust defense. So Zuckerberg admitted that in this article, you guys can check it out. It's on the New Yorker. Mark Zuckerberg says social media is over. And let me zoom in here. And I'm just going to kind of summarize this for you guys. So Zuckerberg admitted that platforms like Facebook and Instagram are no longer just about connecting with friends. And we know that, right? Social media equals less social. Platforms now prioritize broad content, so like celebrity promotion, AI-generated media, over personal updates. And we know that because if I put a picture of my family or if I post a status on Facebook about something personal, it doesn't reach anybody. But if you do reels with quick content, it gets more reach. And the data confirms this shift, right? Time spent viewing friends' posts on Facebook dropped from 22% to 17% on Instagram, and from 11 on Facebook from 22 to 17%, and then on Instagram from 11 to 7%. You can have followers and subscribers even on YouTube, and it's not going to reach your subscribers. It's not even going to reach anybody. Unless it helps with brain rot, to be honest. So the FTC alleges Meta holds a monopoly over personal social networking by acquiring rivals like Instagram and WhatsApp. Meta's counter is that the definition of social media has evolved. Platforms like TikTok, YouTube, and iMessage now compete in the same place. He's got a point there. WhatsApp, TikTok, YouTube, they're all a little bit different. It's almost like, you know, Disney owning ESPN and all the platforms that they own, right? Meta argues that no single platform monopolizes this new broad content consumption industry. They have a point there. The FTC's definition of social networks, it's vague, it's complicating the case. Analyst Benedict Evans critiques the FTC's market definition as gerrymandering. TikTok isn't classified as a competitor. That's an example. The challenges for the FTC are also that proving consumer harm is difficult. Meta's platforms are free, so there's no price-based harm like in other antitrust cases. Yeah, but it's obvious, it's apparent, bro. This is something, it's messing up society, right? That's why we keep our kids off of it. Growth of acquired platform. WhatsApp grew from 500 million to over 2 billion users after Meta's acquisition. FTC argues that without Meta, WhatsApp might have innovated differently, but this is speculative. That's a good argument. Some competitors failed, showing not all rivals succeed. So Google Plus didn't succeed, Path didn't succeed, Vine didn't succeed. Surprising testimony. So in 2018, Zuckerberg suggested spinning off Instagram to boost its performance and preempt future antitrust issues. This foresight into regulatory pressure adds complexity to Meta's defense. And then let's talk about the evolving landscape. So TikTok may face bans. AI platforms like OpenAI are creating new social networks, showing the industry is in flux. OpenAI is creating social networks? What? Yeah. They announced April 15th that they're considering building a social network to compete with X and Instagram. Did y'all know this? Ooh, Elon Musk ain't gonna like that because he don't like this guy. He don't like Sam Altman. That's crazy. OpenAI is building a social network. Did y'all know that? I didn't know that. The FTC may be addressing outdated issues while new competition threats emerge. Europe recently fined Meta $200 million for anti-competitive practices. Trump's administration supports the case, but may use it as leverage for deals similar to tactics with TikTok's owner. Okay, well, the reason why I brought this up is because we were talking about brain rot and avoiding it, because the way these algorithms are working these days, it's not productive. Like if you were intentional in the things you were looking at and researching, that's different. But a lot of times we're just swiping and the algorithm's deciding what's going to give us dopamine. And by the time we spent 2 hours, 3 hours on social media, we didn't get any better. We just wasted time. And then you have that feeling of regret, right? And you didn't get any better. You just wasted time. So, yeah, thanks, man. WG, I appreciate that. That's love. That's love. So I wanted to cover that. I thought that was an interesting topic. And it kind of falls into, related topics that we've had this past week. That social media is not social anymore. All right. The next topic I want to look at is the dark side of real estate. This is a really good one. And the reason why I say that is because I do real estate, and the economy has changed a bit. When a lot of people were pushing this whole idea of house hacking and buying a duplex or buying a house, living in it, move out, rent the one you were living in, buy a new one, rinse and repeat, right? Interest rates were low. Home prices made sense. You could cash flow when you bought stuff. But things have changed quite a bit with inflation and interest rates and affordability and so many things, right? Not just that, but a lot of influencers didn't share that it's real work. How many influencers said real estate is passive income? It's not. It's more passive. You're not necessarily trading time for money. It scales better than a job, but it's not supposed to, in my opinion, I never saw it as replacing a job like that. I saw it as keep your job. You got real estate long term. If in 10 years, 15 years, your real estate is cash flowing, it's great, you got a bunch of equity, and then you can retire from your job, that's great. But it's a long-term investment. That's the way I've always seen it. But a lot of influencers were painting a different picture. And people didn't realize the headaches. It's a skill set. Choosing what kind of tenants you have. The first tenants I've ever had destroyed my house. It was awful. Thank God I had some kind of mentorship with Danny, where things like, they were behind on rent every single month, but they would pay the late fee. And for 2 years, they were behind on rent, but for 2 years, I got those late fees, and I ended up getting all my money. When they moved out, though, it cost me like 15 grand. So all the profits that I made from that house went to fixing the house up once those tenants left, because the security deposit didn't cover the insane amount of, damage they did on the property. But I had built up over $70,000 in equity in that house. So when I sold it after closing costs and commissions and all that stuff, I profited. No closing costs, but commissions. I profited $60,000. So it was still a good investment. But how many people without mentorship would be okay with chasing tenants for late rents and then having to deal with $15,000 in damages? If people are sold on the idea that investing in house hacking and in real estate is so passive, when these things occur, it's going to crush them. And that is the dark side of real estate. But let's watch this video because I'm sure they're going to present it a lot better than I do. But this is coming from somebody who has experience with real estate. And, at this point in my life, I still like real estate. I'm still going to continue to buy real estate, but I'm not trying to have 100 doors like a lot of these people be preaching to do. I'm good with simple real estate, have a portfolio of paid off real estate, sell them all one day, who knows, take the capital, put it into the stock market, into something that's a lot more passive. Yeah, I'm okay with that, but I don't want to own real estate forever at this point in my life.
So you've been scrolling through TikTok or Instagram, and suddenly every other video is someone saying, buy a duplex, live in one unit, rent the other, retire by 30, and sip margaritas in Bali. Cute. But let's talk about the side of real estate investing that those influencers don't mention. The dark side. The this is why I have stress wrinkles at 28 side. Because yeah, real estate can build wealth, but it can also destroy your sanity, your savings, and if you're really committed, your marriage. Let's begin. 1. Tenants. The wild cards of your net worth. So you finally get a rental property. You feel like the monopoly man. You're thinking passive income, baby. And then your tenant stops paying rent. Or better yet, they decide to host underground MMA fights in your living room. Ask any experienced landlord and they'll tell you tenants can range from pays early and sends Christmas cards to calls the city on you for not fixing the AC fast enough even though it's December. And guess what? Evicting a bad tenant isn't as easy as tossing them out like it's a sitcom. It's a long legal process that could take months, during which you're still paying the mortgage, the utilities, and maybe for new drywall because Chad punched a hole in it during fight night. 2. The nightmare of repairs and maintenance. Remember.
Go on to number 2. There were holes, stab holes, punch holes, kick holes all over my walls. They let their kids color all over our blinds and our walls. It was awful. There was a point that he made that I wanted to talk about.
Maybe for new drywall because Chad punched a hole in it during fight night. A sitcom. It's a long legal process that could take months.
I didn't go through the legal process to kick our tenants out. But what I did was I told them, listen, if you leave, I will give you your security deposit back and I will pay for the U-Haul so that you guys can move out. If not, we're going to go through the process and it's going to be ugly. Thank God they took my offer, because I didn't want to go through that legal process of getting them out. It just wasn't worth it. Just get out, please.
During which you're still paying the mortgage, the utilities, and maybe for new drywall because Chad punched a hole in it during fight night. 2. The nightmare of repairs and maintenance. Remember that cute little fixer-upper you bought for a great deal? Well, it turns out great deal is code for money pit. The water heater dies. The roof leaks. There's a mysterious smell coming from the crawl space that might be an actual ghost. Every month there's something. Plumbing issues, termites, the dishwasher deciding to flood your tenant's kitchen for funsies. And if you're managing remotely, you better have a good handyman on speed dial, or be ready to spend your weekends Googling how to fix a garbage disposal like a sad Bob the Builder. 3. The myth of passive income. Let's kill a myth real quick. Real estate is not passive. It's passive in the same way owning a toddler is relaxing. There's always a problem to solve. Something breaks, someone's late on rent, the HOA is mad about your tenant parking a boat on the lawn. You can hire a property manager, sure, but now they take 10% of your rent, and some of them are basically middlemen who do nothing but forward angry emails to you with a smiley face. If you want actual passive income, go buy dividends, stocks, and take a nap. 4, interest rates will betray you. You lock in a mortgage, you're feeling smart, then interest rates shoot up like Elon Musk's rocket launches. Suddenly your next deal doesn't cash flow anymore. The property you thought would make $300 a month is now bleeding money faster than a streaming service trying to compete with Netflix. And refinancing, that door is bolted shut.
Hold on. Yeah, so refinancing would be an issue, but I want to make sure you guys understand. He means like future deals, but if you lock in an interest rate, you're good. And typically, interest rates do come down, and typically, you're not gonna buy anything unless it passes through your spreadsheet and your numbers, anyways. The other thing that I would say is, I knew going in that just because, you know, my rent was $2,000 and my mortgage was $1,500, didn't mean I was making $500 a month. You needed to put an extra $200 a month into a bank account for maintenance issues. And if you needed a property manager, that's another 10%. So you're not profitable, you're break even, but in the long term, you will be profitable because of appreciation, equity pay down, depreciation on taxes. There's all kinds of other ways that your properties make money. This is why I say you buy real estate for the long term, not for the cash flow, not to replace your job. Can you do it for the cash flow? Of course. But that was the problem. Influencers were pushing the cash flow more than all the other aspects, where for me, you know, I still wanted cash flow, but every market ain't the same. In 2008, 2009, 2010, you could buy cash flow all day. In 2025, no. I'm happy to break even and earn appreciation, equity pay down, and depreciation. I'm good with that. And I understand that's what I'm getting into. So
Shut unless you
it's
want
just
to
lack
buy
of
during
information.
closing. Real estate investing is heavily dependent on the market. And unlike Pokemon cards, you can't just wait 10 years and hope it's worth more later.
Everything is depending on the market, right?
5, local regulations will absolutely wreck you
this
out.
one.
Yes, the
I hate
government.
this.
Always there to help, except when they're not. Some cities are cracking down on short-term rentals, others are adding rent control, and some are just making it wildly difficult to even get a rental license without sacrificing a goat under a full moon. Imagine buying a property specifically to Airbnb it, and then boom, the city bans it 3 months later. Now you're stuck with a house you can't use the way you planned.
And by the way, it doesn't have to be just the city. It could be local municipalities. It can be the community that you're in. It can be the city. It could be the county, the state. There's different, like, and, you know, like, for example, Florida banned banning Airbnbs. But there's a federal law. You know, as part of our rights as Americans, we have the right to assembly. And because of that, for example, if you got a condo in a building and all of the people, all of the residents in that building come together and they assemble and they say, we don't want Airbnbs here, and they vote on that, you can't have Airbnbs in that building. The HOA can ban it, even in Florida. A lot of people don't realize that. Same thing in certain communities. So.
And no one wants to rent it long term because it's got a disco ball and 5 bunk beds. 6, real estate gurus.
Facts.
The cult leaders of Instagram. You know those guys in Lamborghinis with captions like, bought this house with none of my own money, ask me how?
They made all their money from the course.
Ask them. They'll tell you. After you pay $997 for their course, join their mastermind, and buy their ebook that's really just 20 pages of vague motivation and stock photos. A lot of mentors make more money from selling the dream than from actually investing.
Yeah, it's true.
They show you their wins, not the 3 deals that crashed and burned and ended with a lawsuit and a therapy session. Be careful who you listen to. Just because they're loud doesn't mean they're legit.
This is why I say, bro, like, if they don't have actual businesses that you can trace, find, if they don't have that, there's so many influences and stuff that you can't attach their name to any business they've built, to any real estate they actually have. Why don't they show it? If you're making so much money from stocks, why don't you show the results?
7, flipping ain't like the TV shows. You ever watch those house flipping shows? 30 minutes in, they've transformed a haunted shack into a modern paradise and made $80K profit. What they don't show, the 4 weeks waiting on permits, the contractor who ghosted halfway through, the plumbing surprise that cost more than a Tesla, the neighbor who called the city every time you hammered a nail. In real life, flipping is risky, expensive, and can go sideways faster than a crypto coin with a dog on it. 8, y'all, is 8. Leverage can work for you or absolutely ruin you. Leverage is the magical word in real estate. It's why you can buy a house with 20% down and still make money off 100% of the asset. But leverage cuts both ways. If the market drops, you're not just losing your 20%, you're still on the hook for the rest. Worse if your tenants can't pay and your reserves are low. Say hello to foreclosure, bankruptcy, or at the very least, a new full-time job, desperately trying to not go broke. 9, it's not as passive or glamorous.
And this is why when you buy real estate, you have to buy it with a margin of safety. How you negotiate your terms matters, right? Sometimes, I bought an $800,000 property with $30,000 out of my pocket because I got the seller to take closing, to cover the closing costs, to figure out some seller credits. I got some of the real estate agents to help out with their commission percentages, and our mortgage company. Some mortgage companies will cap you on how much you can get in seller's credits, but I got it maxed out as much as I could. We saved a bunch of money on the insurance. Man, there's so many. If you understand real estate, there's so many things you can do to make what most people wouldn't see as a good deal. You can make it a good deal. But you always got to have a margin of safety when you buy something. You always have to, unless you think things are going to skyrocket. Like when I bought my house in Wesley Chapel, I bought it for $500,000 because the market was going crazy. I don't know if you guys remember during the pandemic, it was a block party in front of every house that was for sale because you would put an offer on a house and there'd be 50 other offers. It was insane. I knew that demand was going to push the shit out of houses, so I had to hurry up and buy something. My house went from $500,000 to being worth $900,000 in a couple of years. It was crazy.
Or easy. Listen, we're not here to scare you off. Real estate can be a powerful way to build wealth. But if you walk into it thinking it's a quick win or passive income machine, you're going to be disappointed faster than someone who bought Dogecoin at the top. You need to run your numbers like a cold-hearted calculator. Expect the unexpected. Build cash reserves like you're prepping for the apocalypse. And treat it like a business, because it is one. So what's the takeaway? The dark side of real estate isn't just the stuff that goes wrong, it's the stuff no one talks about until it's too late. But if you know what to expect, if you prepare for the headaches, the curveballs, and the inevitable broken toilets, then you'll be way ahead of the people chasing Lambos and falling for guru traps. Invest smart. Don't romanticize the hustle. And remember, if a deal looks too good to be true, it probably comes with raccoons in the attic and a mysterious leak no one wants to talk.
Bats in the attic. My sister got a $15,000 bill because there were bats in her attic. And in order to remove them, there's a process. And I think it's based on your state. I could be wrong. But the bill was $15K. Luckily, she found somebody to do it for $5, I think it was. But she had gotten quotes from anywhere from 10 to 15. And then a friend of a friend did it for $5. Man.
Wants to talk about. Welcome to real estate. You're going to love it eventually.
Eventually. Love it. That was a great video. This is interesting. This guy. That was a great video. That was all facts. That is the dark side of real estate. But most people already know that. Most people who go into investing, I hope, do their due diligence, learn all this stuff, because it's not all it's cracked up to be on that you see on social media a lot of times. So that was good. The dark side of real estate. All right. This I really wanted to cover. Because last night we had finished talking about, we've been talking about what makes good men. And by talking about good men, you know, I had reacted to some Manosphere videos and it got some pushback. And, you know, there's some people who really support the individuals that I was talking about because I was reacting to a video from the Fresh and Fit podcast. And I've always said that I think the Manosphere is mostly good for men, especially, you know, the work hard, the provide, the work on your skill sets, work out, care about, have some self-respect, care about yourself, build yourself up as a man, learn how to deal with confrontation, learn how to have self-control, learn how to fight and protect yourself, all that stuff, right? I think that's good for men. But the way that they talk, but the way they look at marriage and the shit that they teach men about women, like there was a, you know, Myron from Fresh and Fit, he said the 4 things that all men should do. And I was like, yep. What? Number 1, he said, I think he said, invest in yourself, work out, get healthy, get to $100,000 a year and better. And then the 4th one was have 50 sexual partners. I said, bro, there's just as many men as there is women. If that's what you want men doing, how are you going to find any high level woman, any good woman, any wife material? How are you going to find those women? It makes no sense. But then I'm learning, you know, that then there was another interview that I watched. And then, you know, his argument for it is you got to be able to have experience to know what you like and what you don't like. Bro, I have business partners, and I know it's different than marriage, but I don't necessarily need to go into business with these people to know whether or not they would be a good partner in business. I don't have to do no business with them. Just having conversations with them, seeing what they're about here. Like I could tell, man, I ain't trying to build nothing with this person. You know? I mean, imagine using that logic with life in general. You're going to have to test drive 50 cars before you drive one. Getting 50, like before you buy the car you like all this. And I get that analogy is a little bit stupid, but you guys get what I'm saying. But anyways, I watched this video and I thought this was wild. So let's check this out. Myron on the nuclear family. This is Myron on the nuclear family. We're not going to watch all of it because there's a second video I want you guys to see. Because I did some research on this. Because it sounds good when it's convenient, is what I think. So let's check it out.
Why do you not believe in monogamy? I don't believe in it because I don't think it's realistic for men. Honestly, are there some guys out there that can be monogamous? For sure, but I think men are only as faithful as their options, and the reality is most men are going to want to have multiple women. So,
and you guys know my argument for this, right? Like, look, there's a lot of, we as human beings are born sinners. If you're a Christian and you know the whole concept of we are not perfect. You know, Jesus Christ died for our sins because we're not perfect, and we will make mistakes, but you know, being a man of God is about following that North Star. We're not going to be perfect along the way, but we know what's good, we know what's bad, and we need to seek good, and we need to go after good, and we need to be good, and we need to seek God's forgiveness and seek his guidance, and that will steer us in the right direction where we need to be at if we put him at the center, if we put God at the center. And one of those things is men tend to worship lust. That doesn't mean because it's natural that that's good for us. There's a lot of shit to us that's natural. Dopamine is what people seek, and we can get that from sugar. Doesn't mean we should be out here eating like shit. You know, we can get that from drugs. Doesn't mean we should be out here doing drugs. It's not realistic. People are going to do drugs. I get it. But we still don't need to just be accepting that and promoting that just because it's natural to people to want to do that stuff. It's bad for society. That's my argument there.
I'd rather be honest with women and tell them that I'm not going to just have you. No way.
Savannah, that was your question?
Yeah, that was my question.
Yeah, that's me personally. Now, I do think if you find like a super traditional conservative guy that's like Christian and he's really devout in his religion, I think that will keep him monogamous. But he would have to want it for himself and be really, fear God. But most guys are going to not be monogamous.
So you believe in the nuclear family, bringing the
100%.
nuclear family.
A lot of guys.
But that would not be
are
having
monogamous.
multiple women.
A lot of guys are devout Christians. A lot of them. And a lot of them are monogamous. Just like there's a lot of devout Christian women. And there's a lot of, and they're monogamous. But there's also a lot of monogamous everything.
I would have multiple families.
Ooh.
So that's nuclear families.
Families, yeah. That's what I would do.
But kids with like multiple moms is not necessarily.
That's what I multiple families.
Listen to this part. But first I want to cover this because this was a great comment. I don't think you should go around test driving a bunch of women, but I do think you have to know who you are and what's your values. And if you can find a woman who aligns with your values, that is beautifully put. And this is why I think most of what the Manosphere teaches is good. It is about knowing self-evaluation and becoming a better person because you know who you are, you know how you're supposed to get better. And you're focusing on making yourself the best man that you can be. And then women should do the same thing. These are people who are ready for marriage, not people who are lost, who are on OnlyFans, who are on these shows talking about they got 100 bodies. Those people are not ready for marriage. And even if you seek it, you're going to find a toxic, bad marriage that isn't going to last. People should be working on themselves and knowing who they are and evolving as people and becoming a better version of them. And then when they look, you're going to cross paths with people while you're building yourself, while you're self-evaluating and you're building yourself in the rooms that you're in the schools you're going to, in the work environments that you're in the networking events that you're in. It's going to bring you to places where you're going to meet people that are interesting and you build on that. And you'll know whether a woman is like, man, she's awesome. She's beautiful. I'm attracted to her. Her personality is amazing. I want to seek a deeper relationship with this person. Let's go on a date. We ain't even got to smash. That's another thing. Like they teach in this, if a woman don't let you smash on the first date or the second date, just leave her because she's going to let somebody else smash on the first date anyways. So we want women who have self-respect and don't let you smash in the first date. But we don't want to waste our time with those women because we trying to get 50 bodies. How is that productive to society? Now listen to this point right here. Listen to this point right here.
100%.
But that would not be having multiple. Believe
it for himself and be really, fear God. But most guys are going to not be monogamous.
So you believe in the nuclear family, bringing the
100%.
nuclear family.
100%.
But that would not be having multiple women.
I would have multiple families.
Ooh.
So that's nuclear families.
Families, yeah. That's what I would do.
But kids with like multiple moms is not necessarily a nuclear family.
Yeah, I mean, it would be multiple nuclear families, but that's how I would.
But it's not a multiple.
Multiple nuclear. Make that make sense, Myron. You sound fucking dumb, bro. Excuse my language. Like, bro, what? Imagine being a son of a mother who's married to your father, who also has 3 other households with your brother-in-law, or not brother-in-law, I'm sorry, with your half-brother and your mother-in-law. Imagine that. Is he crazy? I barely have time to devote and I got more time than most people because I built my businesses and I've done well for myself over the course of 15 years. Like my kids are in school right now. My wife is she's getting. We're going to New York this weekend, so she's getting a facial or something like that right now. If I got 2 other families, when the hell am I going to find time for all these people and work and have time to myself? Make this shit make sense. And people buy this up. And the reason why I know they buy this up is because I will make videos like this, and we'll go look at the comment section of this video right here. And there are genuinely a shit ton of men that subscribe to this. I just got a thumbs down. Just now, I just got a thumbs down. It's insane.
Nuclear family, because you have multiple women with multiple kids.
Yes.
Okay, you fixed it. You put a thumbs up. I appreciate that.
So it would be multiple families. I mean, depends on how you want to look at it. Like if you want to look at the original, maybe the traditional conservative Christian family unit, then no, then it wouldn't be conventional. But I'm speaking more from, I mean, I was raised in a Muslim family.
Islamic.
So for us, you know, polygamy is a thing. I'm not devout or anything, but I've always obviously agreed with the faith. And I think that solves a lot of the...
So he's not a devout Muslim, but he subscribes to that part of being Muslim. How convenient, right? That doesn't make none of this shit makes sense, Myron. And you're usually a smart guy. You usually make sense on a lot of topics, but this is just a L, bro. And you keep going with it. And it's not just him. It's all kinds of people in the manosphere. All kinds of people in the manosphere.
The world's problems. But no, from a traditional Christian sense, no, you wouldn't be conventional. But I would do it where I would want them all living under one house if I could do it. I'd have my...
You'd have them all living in the same house. Imagine being a child raised in that house. Imagine seeing your mother sharing the same man with 3 other women. Imagine, would you respect your man? Would you respect your father? Yeah, my father be getting bitches, man. Yeah, hell no, that ain't happening, bro. This just sounds dumb.
Have my wives be friends and shit.
My wives
So
be friends
that's
and
not
shit.
a nuclear family.
I said it. I just told you it wouldn't be traditional. No, it would not be. It depends on how you look at it. Like in the Muslim world, that would be considered a traditional family by those standards. But in the Christian world, no, it would not be.
Can we look up the definition of nuclear family? Wouldn't that...
Okay. So let's look at the comment section here. I didn't get to the part where they're talking about the guy, but something happened at 5 minutes. I don't know. But even in the Bible, a man had multiple wives. Look at this shit. She's on Myron with religion, yet she's not a virgin when she met her husband, the double standards. We're born sinners, but she knows it's wrong. She don't got 50 bodies. She might have 1 or 2. And now she's married. Not one single person in the world is perfect. We all have our sins. And that's what's so good about Christianity. And I'm not trying to convince anybody here that it's impossible to be perfect. But you have to walk in good faith every day, man. Here's a good one. This might be one of the few L's Myron from Myron. He was just babbling nonsense. No, he's factually right. Oh no, yeah, he's right. No. Bro, shut your man. Bugging. So with that being said, he said that this is normal to Muslims. And, you know, he's not a devout Muslim, but he does believe in this because he was raised in a Muslim family. Okay. So I did my research and here's what I learned. There are denominations in Christianity that believe in polygamy as well. Right? You have Mormons. But even Mormons say that that's a old way of thinking of things. And most of them do not practice polygamy. Less than in any country, in any denomination, less than 3% of Christians practice polygamy. What's the number for Muslims? What number do you think it is for Muslims? Because Myron, who's not a devout Muslim, he does love that polygamy is okay to Muslims, and that's why he's okay with it, right? Less than 5% of Muslims practice polygamy, and most of those Muslims aren't even in the Middle East. They're not even in America. They're in Africa that practice polygamy. Most of the time, polygamy is practiced in places where there are economic hardships. And the more children you have, the better it is for a family. And what I learned is that when the Quran allowed polygamy, it was for fair reason. It was because it was just and it was better for women who could not farm their own lands, who could not hunt their own animals, create their own. You see what I'm saying? Where today, men use that provision for selfish reasons because they just want more women in their life. It's like they worship lust so much. They worship sex so much that they use that provision as a convenience. And that's what Myron's doing. You can see through it. He's not even a devout Muslim. A man who chooses to be polygamous is the one who doesn't think of marriage on an emotional level. Isn't that what a lot of the Manosphere is teaching these young men and women? One who puts their desires above their wife's. That's 100% the a lot of people in the Manosphere, especially Myron, right? So one who puts their desires above their wife's. And so I went a little bit deeper, and I actually found a video of a devout Muslim speaking on polygamy. And let's see what she has to say. By the way, rest in peace.
Now let's go on here to the issue of polygamy. Let's hit polygamy. We'll go ahead and do that.
And look, I'm not here to criticize anybody's religion. I respect everybody's religion. That's not what I'm doing. I'm here talking about what the Manosphere pushes and how they use religion and, different things without even understanding or being devout religious people. They use that to justify their selfish desires. That's what I'm pointing out. And so let's listen to this lady.
Here to the issue of polygamy. Let's hit polygamy. We'll go ahead and do that one real quick, all right? Again, we have this mixed up idea that polygamy belongs to the man, that this is a gift to the man in some way. Think about it. What does a man gain by having more than one wife? You got it, boy. This brother responded quickly. Seriously, we know that the man is 100% financially responsibility. He's got to cover everything, right? You ever tried to take care of one wife? Man, to try to afford 2 or 3 or 4 and still be just between them, this would not be an easy matter.
Remember, the key is it has to be just between the wives.
And remember that little issue of just, it's hard to be just with one wife. And you want to multiply that? And then think about it. Along with every wife, you get what? A mother-in-law. That'll make you think. You forget about that when you're thinking about just getting a wife, but another mother-in-law? Oh my. So now what is a man getting? Oh, definitely headaches, a drained out pocketbook, and always this terror of answering to Allah on the day of judgment? Oh my, a man has not gained anything by polygamy. It wasn't designed to meet the needs of the man. Polygamy came as a gift to the woman. It is the woman who benefits from polygamy. It is the woman who gains from polygamy. But we've lost track of the understanding of that because it's been presented backwards, that it was something for men. You know, I had a preacher once when we were doing what was supposed to be a dialogue say, you know, if God had meant Adam to have more than one wife, he would have had more than one Eve. Well, my attitude is God was saying to Eve, now look, baby, you don't want more than one of these. After all, he is all-knowing and all-wise, right? He knew, ladies, that to have two husbands, nah, nothing is worth that. Now, we could go into explaining how it is that women benefit, and maybe, inshallah, another time I will, but I want to cover a lot more stuff than to really get in depth on that, but truly.
And so with that being said, I did find a video that talked about it. And, you know, just take my word for it, because I'm not going to find the video right now, but my dog's all over me right now. My baby. Essentially, it was supposed to be for the woman, especially during, you know, 1,000 years ago or 600 years ago or whatever. When again, and today, where polygamy is most prominent is in places where there's no infrastructure, where there's a lot of economic turmoil, and you know, a man is very, very valuable in that they have to work the farms and provide monetarily, while the women have to be there and take care of the kids. There's no daycares. There's none of that shit over there, bro. And you know, back in obviously, where when the Quran was created, and society back in those days, it was more prominent that men were needed and women, you know, they couldn't raise children and hunt and provide and all this stuff. So that's when polygamy was more prominent. And even today, where in the regions where it is more prominent, it's in places that have less of a healthy economy, right? So that's what I think she means by it was supposed to be a benefit for women, where men today are using it for selfish desires, like the Manosphere. A lot of them are doing it, and that's why a lot of them are converting to Islam. Like you see, what's his name, Sneeko? He don't know shit about the Quran, but he's a Muslim now. Why? Because he's he was part of the Manosphere and all that shit, and he wanted to be able to argue that, you know, he loves having a bunch of women, and it's just dumb, bro. And dudes man, men be thinking with the wrong head, like you were saying, bro, in the chat. They just and then then they end up like Shannon Sharp, or they end up like a lot of these guys who have multiple kids with multiple wives, mad at the world, mad at the government, mad at child, what is it? You got the court system. You guys get what I'm saying. It's just dumb. You're leading people to a terrible place. I need one good loyal woman, one good amazing mother to my children. That's what I need, bro. I do not worship lust and sex and all that shit. I love sex, and me and my wife have a great sex life, but I don't worship that shit as much as I worship other things that I prioritize. Like, come on, y'all. Come on, y'all. We need balance here. If you don't have I just can't imagine that life. All right, let's move on. So I thought that was interesting. Let's see what's going on. Stock market wise, I'm pretty sure we're in the green. Stock market wise. But let's see. Yeah. Everything's in the green. I thought it was going to be red today. But it's up. Right now my puts are printing. The puts I sold. I got a couple that are closing soon. So I got to open some new contracts here soon. Keep cash flowing, you feel me? What the hell is that in the background? All right, let's see if there's any news that I'm missing before we move on to the next thing that I had on the agenda. That's what's helping. The news on Trump giving a major update on China. Did you see remember we were talking about Kilmar and Abrego Garcia? Bro, it's not looking good for Kilmar. You know, I was kind of like, damn, this is kind of messed up. But they interviewed that dude's wife. She had a restraining order on him. Like, it was just weird. The math ain't mathin'. Let me watch this real quick before we move on to the next topic. Whoops, what am I doing here?
Minister of the Kingdom of Norway with us today, who, as you know, has been doing a fantastic job and truly respected.
We already watched this, so I ain't worried about that. We watched this live. We got what we needed. That's how we got into the discussion on Russia-Ukraine war. That's how we got into the discussion of Norway. So let's go on to the next topic. There's not really any news that I need to watch here. So let's go on to this next topic. Hope everybody's having a great day, by the way. Okay, I wanted to watch this interview with Warren Buffett. Warren Buffett, for those of you guys that don't know, been living under a rock, greatest investor of all time. And anytime he does an interview, I think it's worth watching. A lot of people don't watch it because people are chasing day trading and meme coins and meme stocks and overnight wealth. This guy was the richest man in the world a few times and the best investor of all time. And he's been through many markets, through many crises and catastrophes and recessions and all that shit. And he's performed throughout all those years. So his business partner passed away. And so these days, man, he's getting a lot older. So anytime we get a chance to hear him speak, you guys should be listening. Because he's got no dog in the fight. You know, the information that he gives, it's probably because he genuinely thinks it's going to help people. So let's watch this interview.
Welcome. I'm Tracy Smith, and this is Here Comes the Sun, a closer look at some of the people, places, and things we bring you every weekend on Sunday morning. Katharine Graham was a trailblazer during some of the 20th century's biggest events, like the Watergate scandal and the Pentagon Papers. Her life, her friendship with then Washington Post shareholder Warren Buffett, and the extent of her feud with President Richard Nixon are all the center of a new documentary titled Becoming Katharine Graham, now streaming on Amazon Prime.
At the center of the story is an unlikely friendship that began on June 4th, 1973.
Ah, this is the letter.
That's the famous letter.
The famous letter.
When Buffett sent Graham a letter after buying a significant amount of the Washington Post company's stock.
I said, I'll never buy another share unless you personally okay it. And I signed a document, and we became friends.
Later in the show, Warren Buffett on Katharine Graham's heroism.
Would you say Katharine Graham was one of your heroes?
Oh, yeah. To do what she did under those circumstances, show me anybody else. I mean, there are people, the firemen during 9/11. I mean, there's all kinds of heroes in the world. But,
of course, yeah.
But it was a unique kind of heroism by a woman. And she didn't think of herself as representing women all of it. That she was kind of uncomfortable in that. But like it or not, that she was in the spot.
Then Lee Cowan visits Julian's Auction, an auction house giving people a chance at owning celebrity memorabilia. Owners Martin Nolan and Darren Julian look at it.
Here's no way. Are the heart and fanboy souls years
right here, Post. Graham went from being a housewife to becoming the first female CEO of a Fortune 500 company. It was because of her that the Post stock price went up 3,000%. Nora O'Donnell sat down with Graham's dear friend and Washington Post investor, Warren Buffett, to learn why he believes Graham was one of a kind.
If there's any story that should be told, it should be her story. If I was a young girl, I'd want to hear that story. It would change my self-image.
Warren Buffett rarely gives interviews, but also rare his friendship with the late trailblazing publisher of the Washington Post.
Why did you want to talk about Katharine Graham?
Well, she was one of a kind, and she was terrified of the job. She knew she could do things, but she'd been told all her life that she wasn't, and that females didn't do things. I mean, her mother told her, nobody's interested in listening to you. And so all of a sudden, here she is, and she had an all-male board that was waiting for her, and all they wanted was her to stay home and cash the dividend checks.
Graham was thrust into the role, taking over the company after her husband, Philip Graham, died by suicide. She was then at the center of some of the century's biggest stories.
The much discussed and apparently widely read but still classified Pentagon documents were turned over to Congress today.
She made the decision to publish the Pentagon Papers that helped lead to the end of the Vietnam War.
5 men with bugging gear were found in Democratic headquarters here in the Watergate building.
It was Katharine Graham who supported the investigative journalism that led to President Nixon's resignation after Watergate.
I shall resign the presidency effective at noon tomorrow.
It was such an extraordinary time.
Oh, everything. And she had been drummed into her head. Only men can succeed at business.
The worst.
I don't like this interview. It's pretty much a documentary about somebody else, and although I'm sure it has a lot of value, it's not really something I'm trying to watch right now. So hopefully you guys are cool with that. Hopefully y'all good with that. All right. Here's what I wanted to watch too. One of the things that was kind of scary with the whole trade war with China is immediately China started looking for ways to replace, 14% of their GDP. And they were going on tour. And check this out. Europe, a lot of these European countries are part of NATO, and they benefit from America's military, and they benefit from our consumerism as well. But they're over here negotiating and cutting out America and working directly with China. You tell me if that's cool. As an American taxpayer who funds a lot of the benefits that these European countries, we saw how Norway benefits from us, right? But they're out here negotiating with, the government, the Chinese government, and Americans are totally like, that's our fault. Oh, good for them. Like it's weird, bro. But anyways, I do like that JD Vance started touring. Whether you like JD Vance or not, he's going and touring and talking to these other countries. And he recently went to India. His wife apparently is Indian as well. I didn't even know that. And so he's doing his rounds and he goes to India. And I got to watch like the first couple of minutes of it. And it was very good. It was very intriguing. It's exactly what we want, our government. We want, I think the American people want our government saying to these countries. It's not that we want other countries to have less or not grow or America only. It's America first, and with that, we raise tides. Everybody should win. We just want fair, and that's why we're putting America first when we haven't for a very long time. We just want fair. We want everyone can win and everyone can grow as long as we're fair. That's what I think the American people want. I think that's not a bad thing to ask for. And so JD Vance, he's on stage in India, And I thought that this was very well put by him. So I'll let you guys check it out for yourselves.
As it looks like J.D. Vance is walking.
Forum in Jaipur. I'm thrilled to address the Ananta Center's India-U.S. Forum, and I'm thrilled to have you all here with me. Thanks to all of you, the business leaders, decision makers, and of course the students for being here. And thanks to our great team at the U.S. Embassy for everything that you guys do for our country. In the United States, we're proud of the deep connection between our nations, between India and the United States. Prime Minister Modi, as most of you probably know, was one of the first visitors welcomed into the Oval Office during President Trump's second term. And like President Trump, the Prime Minister inspires remarkable loyalty because of the strength of his belief in his people and in his country. Now, we're so grateful for Prime Minister Modi's hospitality as well as the reception that he and everyone else in this country have given us on this first trip for me to India. This is my first time visiting the birthplace of my wife's parents, and she's, of course, in the front row there. There you are, Usha. Thank you. She's a bit of a celebrity, it turns out, in India, I think more so than her husband. But I haven't been here long, but already I've been fortunate enough to visit the Akshardham Temple. Did I pronounce that right, honey? I did okay? All right. With my family this morning, as a matter of fact. And last night, Prime Minister Modi welcomed me, Usha, and our 3 small children at his beautiful home. I've been amazed by the ancient beauty of the architecture of India, by the richness of India's history and traditions, but also by India's laser-like focus on the future. And those things, I think this appreciation for history and tradition and this focus on the future is very much something that I think animates this country in 2025. Now, in other countries I've visited, it sometimes feels like there's a flatness, a saneness, a desire to just be like everyone else in the world. But it's different here. There's a vitality to India, a sense of infinite possibility, of new homes to be built, new skylines to be raised, and lives to be enriched. And there's a pride in being Indian, a feeling of excitement about the days that lie ahead. Now, it's a striking contrast with too many in the West, where some in our leadership class seem stricken by self-doubt and even fear of the future. To them, humanity is always one bad decision away from catastrophe. The world will soon end, they tell us, because we're burning too much fuel, or making too many things, or having too many children. And so, rather than invest in the future, they too often retreat from it. Some of them pass laws that force their nations to use less power. They cancel nuclear and other energy generation facilities, even as their choices, the choices of these leaders, lead to more dependence on foreign adversaries. Meanwhile, their message to their friends, to countries like India, is to tell them that they're not allowed to grow. Well, President Trump rejects these failed ideas. He wants America to grow, he wants India to grow, and he wants to build the future with our partners all over the globe. And when I look at this audience, or when I visit this incredible country over these last couple of days, I see a people that will not be held back. Now, the most profound responsibility I believe that all of us have is not to ourselves, but to the next generation, to make sure we leave them with a better society than the one that our parents and our grandparents gave us. And this is the world that America seeks to create with you. We want to build a bright new world, one that's constantly innovating, one that's helping people to form families, making it easier to build, invest, and trade together in pursuit of common goals. Now, I believe that our nations have much to offer one another, and that's why we come to you as partners looking to strengthen our relationship. Now, we're not here to preach that you do things any one particular way. Too often in the past, Washington approached Prime Minister Modi with an attitude of preachiness, or even one of condescension. Prior administrations saw India as a source of low-cost labor on the one hand, even as they criticized the Prime Minister's government, arguably the most popular in the democratic world. And as I told Prime Minister Modi last night, he's got approval ratings that would make me jealous. But it wasn't just India. This attitude captured too much of our economic relationship with the rest of the world. So we shipped countless jobs overseas and with them, our capacity to make things, from furniture, appliances, and even weapons of war. We traded hard power for soft power, because with economic integration, we were told, would also come peace through sameness. Over time, we'd all assume the same sort of bland, secular, universal values, no matter where you lived. The world was flat after all. That was the thesis, and that was what they told us. And when that thesis proved false, or at least incomplete, leaders in the West took it upon themselves to flatten it by any means necessary. But many people across the world, and I think your country counts among them, they did not want to be flattened. Many were proud of where they came from, their way of life, the kind of jobs they worked, and the kind of jobs their parents worked before them. And that very much includes people in my own country, the United States of America. Now, some of you are aware of my own background. I actually didn't plan to talk about my background at all until last night at dinner while my children mostly behaved. We gave them an A- for behavior with the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister said, I have one request. I want you to talk a little bit about your background. And so I wanted to do that. For those of you who don't know anything about me, I wanted to talk about it. I come from, and I'm biased, the greatest state in the Union, the state of Ohio, a longtime manufacturing powerhouse in the United States of America. My home specifically is a place called Middletown. Now, it's not a massive city by any means. It's not Jaipur, but it's a decent-sized town and a place where people make things, which has been a point of pride in Middletown for generations. It's filled with families like my own, some of whom called us hillbillies, Americans who came down from the surrounding hills and mountains of West Virginia, Tennessee, and Kentucky to cities like Middletown in pursuit of the manufacturing jobs that were creating widespread prosperity for families all across America. They came to Middletown in search of what we call back home the American dream. In Middletown, my parents raised me. My grandparents raised me. They taught us to work hard. They taught me to study hard, and they taught me to love God and my country and always be good to your own. My granddad, who I called Papaw growing up, he typified that. Late into life, he worked as a steelmaker at the local mill, and I know India has a lot of those. Papaw's job gave him a good wage, stable hours, and a generous pension. All that allowed him to support not just him and my grandmother, but his own daughter and grandkids with him. Now, by the time I came around, money was awfully tight, but he worked hard to make a good living for all of us. Now, I know Papaw and Mamaw were grateful for the way of life their country made possible. Their generation bore witness to the formation of America's great middle class. And by creating an economy centered around production, around workers who build things, and around the value of their labor, our nation's leaders then transformed their country and made thousands of little Middletowns possible. The government supported its labor.
So I really like, we don't need to watch all of this, but I really like the way he carried himself in this, in that he was very gracious about the way he talked about India and their people, and he wasn't condescending. And like a lot of the things, Democrats for a long time, and I was historically, I voted Democrat most of my life. But the way that this party was, they were very condescending. They sat on this pedestal. They felt like they were the moral superior of all these countries, and that, they were just lecturing a lot of countries and a lot of their leadership. And these countries are prideful. They don't want to hear that shit, man. This is our country. Leave us how we are. Our people voted for this. And so I respect the way that Vance called that out, and he said that's not what they're going to be doing. And they want to work harder. They want to work together with these countries and grow these countries. And so what ended up happening is he was there for 4 days, and they ended up finalizing the terms for negotiations. They didn't finalize the actual negotiation, but they finalized the terms for negotiations. And the aim is to double bilateral trade to $500 billion by 2030. And he said it's not that we want cheap labor. We just want to work with India's people. Vance emphasized the importance of India purchasing more American defense and energy products, including a F-35 fighter jets, and calling for reduced non-tariff barriers to facilitate U.S. market access. Both nations plan to finalize a 10-year defense framework agreement later this year. That's bad news for China. All the media that I've seen has been making it seem like, China, India, Russia are coming together, the biggest countries in the world, and they're going to destroy America. But it looks like America's working with India. The visit also addressed concerns over U.S. tariffs, with Vance assuring that the Trump administration seeks fair trade partnership. India aims to conclude the first phase of trade pact by autumn to avoid potential tariff hikes. Man, can you do it by summertime, please? Hurry. Overall, the trip reinforced the strategic partnership between U.S. and India, focusing on defense, energy, and economic collaboration. So that's great news. And you don't really see that being shared as frequent as I think it should be. Cool. With that being said, guys, that's it for today. That's all I got for this live stream. I appreciate y'all hanging out with me. Let's be for real, though. It is because of cheap labor. Well, it's part of it. But even with China, if you're educated on it, it's not necessarily because of cheap labor. Remember, we have to ship all this stuff there, back. There's compromise here, and it still evens out. But it's also skills. It's also the manipulation of the dollar. There's many different reasons why, and it's also scalability. So just something to think about. No, there was a terrorist attack a few days ago. Not a few years ago. A few days ago, I did see that. It was sad, man. Very, very sad. Yeah, I did see that. I didn't get a chance to cover it because all the media that was covered, it was hard for me to understand what was going on. It was a lot of chaos, and none of the U.S. outlets really covered it. So, but sure, cheap labor is a benefit because it's cheaper than the labor we have here. But the shipping costs, the logistics, all that stuff, and then the cost for us to recreate that infrastructure, it would end up just being way too expensive. It's more than just cheap labor. And I think that JD Vance addressed it, that it's not about cheap labor, even though it is a benefit. But that, for us it's cheaper, but he wants Indian people to have livable wages, which doesn't mean we got to pay $20 an hour. Over there, a person making $1,000 a month is making great money. But it's all relative, right? Because cost of living is also cheaper over there than it is in the States. So they're a growing, developing country. They're huge, and their growth is insane. And it works out. It works out. It's beneficial to both parties, and I think that's what's important. All right, guys. Y'all have a good one, man. Y'all have a good one. Hey, don't say that, because the American people, they think China is doing a better job than America is. Don't say that. All right, yeah. Take care.